But yeah. Anyway, how's it going? Damn, it looks like a good show tonight. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
It's the perfect storm, so it could.
I did some research into a lot of the people, especially Gothix, because we don't talk too much. We don't talk about them too much.
Yep.
Oh yeah, Gothix is like Dunning-Kruger effect personified. Honestly.
Well, listen,
Wow.
I'm just a commentator, okay? I'm
Yeah,
just
you've got
giving
to
my
be.
Wait, sorry. Okay, sorry. I need to get out of my system. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
I just-
my non-biased opinion on the situation at hand.
yeah. That was the last comment I'll make. Okay.
The only way to write it then would be for somebody to say something on the opposite, and I'd have to say that I like Gothix. I think
Joe
she's
Lewis
pretty on
isn't
point.
black. There you go.
Wait, what was that?
You said say something on the opposite. There you go.
I'm glad no one else caught that.
I think I did, but I can't repeat it because then it would be me saying it, and then that's bad, So
I can be way more racist than you, Angloid.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
No.
Yes. Hey, Dylan.
Hey, welcome everybody to the Hippy Dippy Championship pre-show. We have about 13 minutes until the Hippy Dippy Championship undercard is going to start. It has a card. One second, let me get the document. It has a card that's going to have Gothix, Counterpoints, Hunter Avalone, and Joe Lewis, and they're going to be talking about cancel culture, if it's gone too far, and political correctness and stuff like that. The culture war, so to speak. And so before we talk about that and then talk about the main event, I would like to have you guys introduce yourselves and give your thoughts of the event and what you're going to expect so far. We're going to start with Chudlogic.
Hey everyone, I'm Chudlogic. I'm a streamer covering drama, politics, pop culture, big tech, all the cool stuff, all the fun stuff. So in terms of the event, it's obviously looking absolutely fantastic. Really excited to see what comes out, see how it plays out. One thing I'm particularly excited about is obviously Haas is someone that has professed to essentially have won every debate he's ever had, and now that's going to be put to the test in an official setting. And as we know, there's never any problems with the votes on the Hippy Dippy Championship, so I'm certain that we're going to get a fair result and everything's going to be all gravy. So yeah, that's going to be good. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
Happy to hear it. Next, we're going to throw it over to Shark Zero.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Shark300. I'm a political commentator. We have fun here. We do memes, play games, and talk about the normal happenings through a socialist lens. I'm pretty excited about what's going to happen between Gothix and Joe Lewis, because some people don't know this, but they've gone head to head before, and especially on cancel culture. They had about a 3-hour debate on that. And Joe Lewis isn't the most confrontational person when he's debating, but I do know we have some pretty confrontational people who are going to be on the panel, Counter and also Hunter, who won't be scared to just really dig into some stuff if it gets there, especially on cancel culture. Gothix, who's like anti-BLM. I just want to see what's definitely going to be happening there. It'll be fun. And actually, Chud, you're wrong. Hans said he has lost one debate, but it wasn't because of him. It was because of chat and made him look like a cuck. So.
Oh really? Which debate was that?
I don't remember exactly, but I do remember watching him get mad at chat because they made him look bad and the entire community looked bad. So apparently that's the debate, the only debate that he's lost. Other ones he's completely dunked and destroyed. I mean, Dylan, you know that his shadow fighter, Dinkle, kind of just blew you out of the water with that one. Really
yes. By the end of it, I was surely shown why Russia bombing hospitals is no issue whatsoever.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Now we have a surprise guest, hippy dippy connoisseur, self-referred people's champion, CTV, has once again barged into the studio and asked to be able to talk about this. And he has some problems with this event, I've heard.
Well, let's be clear. I didn't ask shit. Told you how it was going to be, right? So, I'm here, and what you're going to see a lot tonight, folks, is you're going to see Haas have some high energy coming in to get to the debate with Destiny. But see, if Destiny is smart, Destiny's going to he's going to play the long game, and he's going to keep his cool, right? Let Haas wear out the extent of his intellectual ability, right, and then when he's tired out, that's going to be the moment that you're going to see Destiny strike and actually come away with the win tonight, right? So now that I've laid out for everybody exactly what's going to happen during the show tonight, this is going to let you know that when predictions are made and predictions come true, that the people's champion, right, speaks the truth. And that right there is what the people need to take away from tonight.
Wonderful. Okay. So now that we've resolved intros, I want to ask you guys about the finer details. So, as many of you know, Joe Lewis is a very pertinent opponent of Gothix. Doesn't like very many of Gothix's opinions whatsoever. And we know Joe Lewis has famously been extremely confrontational on shows before. How do you think the Joe Lewis Gothix dynamic is going to go down? I wanted to start with Chudlogic's belief about this.
Yeah, so I watched their previous debate. I think it's clear there's no love lost between the two of them. I think in terms of rhetorical ability, Joe Lewis definitely has the upper hand in that respect. I would say, though, that I think Gothix is definitely a crowd pleaser. Her debate style definitely plays well to her audience. So I think it's really going to be a toss-up between whether that is going to overpower Joe's rhetorical ability or, the other way around.
What do you think, Shark?
I mean, I really want to see Joe Lewis come out of the gate swinging on this one when it comes to things like cancel culture and like the culture war in general. There are just so many things that that you can like harp on, that you can get her to acquiesce on, that are pretty normal things, like talking about like Mr. Potato Head, the whole debacle with Goya beans, the rice, the butter. Like things like that I feel like you could really push on and get like some easy acquiescing backpedaling there to get Gothix on the back foot. That being said, Gothix is no like pushover when it comes to her rhetoric. So I want to see what she can do to try and overcome that. But I know she's probably going to have a lot of pushback when she opens her mouth.
Got you. And how do you think about Hunter Avalone as it here? I haven't heard many people talk about how people think Hunter Avalone is going to interact with Counterpoints and Gothix tonight. Counterpoints, of course, being the other conservative we're having on today's show. CTV, what do you think about Hunter? How do you think he's going to perform tonight?
I think Hunter's going to do what Hunter usually does, which is just kind of flail around for a bit, try to make a point, but it's going to fail, right? Gothix needs to be aware of the fact that she's coming into this thing alone, right? We've seen Counterpoints flip to the left many, many times in the past, right? And there's no reason to think that he might not end up doing the same thing tonight. So Gothix, make sure you got your head on a swivel, girl, because they're coming for you.
So also CTV, you said you had a statement you wanted to make of some sort about the programming.
Well, the programming is what it is, right? It's obvious that we needed somebody to get Haas out of the way. Might as well let Destiny do my light work, like I've said before. But Destiny knows who the real contender is, right? So he's going to have that in the back of his mind tonight, no doubt, going into this debate.
So do you believe that you are the rightful challenger for the belt? Where do you think you get that right to just be able to challenge for the belt?
Oh, it's not a right? It is.
It just is.
What?
It just is.
Chudlogic, what do you think about CTV's claims that he deserves a title shot?
Well, okay, I'll be honest with you. On the balance of things, I think it's absolutely absurd. However, I do think we need to give some credit to the absolutely phenomenal facial hair that CTV is currently sporting right now, okay? Dude looks like the coolest trucker dude I've ever seen in an American TV show. So I think there's got to be some points awarded for that, surely.
Okay. Good facial hair. That is a universally agreed upon thing in the show. What about Shark? Do you think CTV deserves a title shot? Do you think he's been screwed by the Hippy Dippy Championship Executive Board?
Listen, as a humble outsider, okay, I've only been on the championship once. I can't tell necessarily. There was a lot of screaming back and forth there. I do have to say, no matter what I think of CTV, I commend the enthusiasm and the persistence that he keeps up when it comes to this belt. You know, he hasn't necessarily been there. Vosh had it, Destiny has it, and there was a big fight between them and Demon Mama, and then he came in. Maybe
by the way, what do we all think about that? Do we all believe Destiny's a rightful champion, or do you think that Demon Mama was screwed out of the championship? I mean, CTV was deeply involved in that. It was a very controversial event. Many people believe that it was the failing of the championship. Other people believe that people overreacted. What are you guys' thoughts on those plane of events? Because that set up what we have today, and it set up CTV's claim that he deserves a title shot.
Okay, listen, I'm going to throw it out there, okay? I've got to back my girl Demon Mama on this, all right? I know that's going to make me unpopular with the DGG component, but the VGG component are hopefully there to back me up on this too. Demon Mama got robbed, okay? I think there was some atrocious foul play in effect, and I think that, like, there was a lot of hurt feelings. I'm not sure if CTV... I'm not sure if CTV really bought anything except antagonism, and that's my take.
Wow. Shark, I saw you cringe for a second. I saw you kind of pull back. Is there anything you want to share about those events? I mean, you are a former challenger for the title in one of the Rumbles. You have participated in the events. What do you think about those claims?
Listen, it was all over the place. I have to say, I think I think the whole thing should have been like DQ'd and redone. In that case, I mean, at the end of the day, there was so many hurt feelings. It was everyone was yelling at the ref. There was, people were tired, people were emotionally distraught. It was just a whole bad thing. And I feel like, we could have not stepped on as many toes if we just, did the whole thing back over again. But, it's not my show. So, I mean, the show must go on. Destiny has it now, and we're here today. So no point looking into the past.
Would you call him the rightful champion, or do you think he was stolen?
Listen, okay?
I need a firm commitment on this. I don't need you to dodge the question, Shark. Don't dodge the question.
Don't dodge the question. Listen.
Don't dodge.
He has it. He's here. It has to, I mean, by all intents and purposes, that's rightful, isn't it?
So it's the Larry Elder answer on Trump's election.
Yeah, go ahead. Listen. Okay. He's rightful. He's here. Go ahead.
Okay. We're gonna now throw it over to CTV. What are your thoughts?
Well,
you were deeply involved.
It's obvious, right? Like, there was an initial vote. The initial vote was Destiny, right? There was a second vote, right? There was controversy, right? Destiny, with the two choices of Demon Mama Destiny, is the rightful champion, right? The reality of what that show was before, though, is that if you go back and review it, you'll see that Hunter participated not very much. And it just sucked, right? His participation in the entire panel was just a fluke. And somehow he gets past me. That's where I have to speak to conservative bias, right?
I'm sensing some bias, yeah. Come on.
There's some conservative bias here, right, on the entire platform, right? So I keep having to fight back against this every single time. I don't really try to point the arrow right at that, but everybody knows it's there, right? So because it's there, this is the reality situation. There hasn't been as much respect for the title as there should have been in the past, and all of the people recognize the amount of respect that should be not only shown but given to earning the title. And because these people have not been doing that, this is why the people scream. They chant CTV, CTV. You know why? Because he's the fucking people's champion, and he knows. He fucking knows, right, what it means.
Listen, I have to push back on that. I think Hunter, he picks and chooses his battles. I think that's pretty smart. You don't have to yell through the entire thing. I think it's important to know where you should step in, know where you should back out. And if it comes to the point where you don't have too much here and other people are screaming, there's no reason to just hop in just for fun, especially if less of the topic's going to be touched on.
Well, I want to say, I think we focused a lot of attention on the other people there. I think the wild card in this situation is Counterpoints, because although Counterpoints is on the right side of the aisle, he's, with Gothix, there's a big question mark over where he's going to turn on some of these issues, because I know that he's not just going to follow the party line and agree with Gothix necessarily. I think there's a very real chance that at points, this could even become a 3-in-1 situation with the lefties and Counterpoints against Gothix. What's going to play out then,
Does that put Gothix in a risky situation, considering she's never challenged in any hippy dippy or debate format with our show ever before?
Absolutely, and that's where she needs to be careful of Counterpoints, right? If Counterpoints is smart, he's going to try to team up early with Gothix and maintain that alliance. If he breaks that alliance, though, on anything at all, right, what it's going to do is definitely put her in a very defensive position, which is then going to affect the mood of everything else. So it's a situation that you got to keep an eye on.
Okay, final predictions for the kickoff before we meet back up afterwards.
Destiny's going to hold the title.
Well, for the kickoff, that's Gothix and Connor and all that stuff.
I think Gothix is going to come out strong early on for sure.
Shark?
I think Gothix at the beginning is going to have a lot of really strong points. I think as it goes on, those are going to be whittled away. I can really see Hunter Avalone pulling this out at the end. Joe Lewis as well. Once again, depending on how strong he wants to go, I can really see him doing a lot. He does a lot of research. He can bring his papers. He's a little bit of a binder Andy, so I can really see him like throwing some papers around, Phoenix Wright style.
Wonderful. And Chudlogic, wrap it up.
Okay, so to be honest with you, unless Hunter and Joe fall into the trap of the kind of lefty denial of cancel culture even being a thing, and kind of going down the lefty route with some of these talking points, I really don't see any other way other than those two coming out on top. I think that although the right own discourse online with a lot of these topics, I think if you've got smart people like Joe and Hunter in the room, they're going to bring really strong left-wing arguments to support their points, and I really think they're going to come out on top.
Okay, thank you all for coming on. We're now going to go into the kickoff event, undercard. I'm very excited for this. Thank you guys. You may now exit as we welcome in the contestants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Okay.
All right. Yeah, I really think at the beginning it's going to be really Gothic's going to come out because she has a lot of rhetoric. But once again, in these topics, in a prolonged discussion, rhetoric can only take you so far. Wrong screen? No, it's not the wrong screen. I do not have my camera up at the moment, and I'm going to be pulling up Dylan's stream so we can make sure that we watch this. Oh, actually, could I spy? Can I spy? Let's see. I may not be able to. Giga sad. No, I can't. Okay. Whoops. Now that's the wrong screen.
Into it. So first, I'm going to start, as always, on my left. Connor, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Connor. I identify as centrist or center right. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints. You can type that in common spelling and you'll be able to find me. I'm a Marine veteran, law enforcement veteran, a science fiction, political, and philosophy nerd. I like arguing with everybody about everything all the time, which is why I love spending my Friday nights with Dylan Burns. You should as well. And thank you for having me, buddy. Sincerely appreciate being here.
Happy to have you on. You did very well on the last panel you were on. Next, we're going to throw it over to Hunter Avalone.
Hi, thanks so much, Dylan, for having me on. Just really quick, if it isn't too much trouble, if you could fix the spelling in your title. Mine Avalone. It is Avalone, like forever alone. But anyway, yeah, my name's Hunter Avalone, former conservative turned social democrat. Looking forward to talking politics today. Thanks again for having me on, Dylan.
Happy to have you on, Hunter. Now we're going to throw it over to a longtime guest on the channel, Joe Lewis, who I also went to Got Brisket with, and it was absolutely delicious.
That it was. Yeah, so somehow, if you don't know who I am, I'm Joe Lewis. My Twitch channel is twitch.tv/Joe Lewis, the O being a 0. I am slowly but surely becoming a political refugee, one Twitter take at a time. So I'm happy to be here.
True. You've been a refugee from the Hans Kingdom. But one funny thing about the brisket story is there was this drama magazine publication.
Ultra Peaks, thank you so much for the 3 months in a row. Sorry for doing this during a debate. Don't even worry about it. It's no problem. Thank you so much for the resub, remaining a part of the frenzy, and being incredibly pog. Thank you.
They were like, it was a magazine article, Dylan's income revealed, and then you read it, it was like, look, he got brisket, he seems to be very wealthy. So we figured out the economy. If you just give poor people brisket, then they're wealthy. Happy to figure it out. Brisket down economics. Now we're going to bring it to a first-time guest. Happy to finally have them on. I've been wishing and hoping to have them on for the longest time. And Kat was very lovely and helped make the connection. Throwing it over to Gothix.
Dylan, thank you so much for having me on your show. I will preface by saying debates are something that I normally don't do, but I will say that you guys are very persistent, so I am here, and thank you for reaching out. I'm looking forward to a very civil and delightful conversation.
She's
happy
using
to
a
have you on,
as well.
By the way, I love your glasses. So
thank you so much.
Well, he didn't say that
Here's
about
the
me.
rules.
What the fuck?
First rule, of course, is we don't break terms of service. That means no slurs, anything that would get our channel taken down. I like to eat food. It's an important part of my life, and so I would like to be able to buy food in order to do that, so I'd like to not lose my job. Second rule is when I'm talking, no one else is talking, because I am only moderating. I will never try to give my beliefs during a debate. I feel that that is a show of bias, and I would like to keep as much bias away from my moderation style as physically possible. During the start and end of the topic, I'll give you all an uninterrupted section to make a quick intro, about a minute long, and an outro. It's going to be shorter today because we have less time to talk about the issues, but do not interrupt anybody during that time. When I talk and I speak, I am purely moderating, and so when I start to speak, no matter what's happening, please quiet down, because I don't want it to get too chaotic. Now, and here is a recommendation, not a rule. I do not dictate people be nice and kind to each other, right? I'm not gonna police you being and make you like a good boys and girls and such. But what I am gonna suggest is that you do get more people with honey than vinegar. Okay, it's more successful, and to make sugar your favorite spice, always be nice. It's a recommendation, but of course, I'm not gonna make you be nice to people. And so, does everybody understand the basic premise of the program? Wonderful. Any questions? No? Great. So we're going to start with the first topic. We might go into the second topic depending on how the conversation goes, and it's very simple. So recently, the culture war has evolved, and it's been a new discussion about this thing called cancel culture. And so the question is, it's very simple, broad question. You can approach it any way you want to. Has cancel culture gone too far, or is it just responsibility? It's just people being held responsible, or has it gone too far? We're going to start with Counterpoints in the top left-hand corner.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty clear, like, number one, cancel culture is real. If I hear that tonight, I will get a little fussy. Number two, I do think that it has absolutely made discourse totally toxic, to the point that we can't really get descriptive reality. We've been having the same conversations for like 2 years. We've been having some of the same conversations for 5 years. And it's mostly because we're jerks to each other. So we don't really understand what the other side is saying, or what they care about, or their motivations, or anything like that. We just kind of call everybody evil. And then we just kind of do that, like, 2 to 3 times a week, or a few dozen times on Twitter every single day. So that's fun. And I love yelling at people on the internet. It's one of my favorite pastimes, or else I wouldn't be here. But at the same time, I do want to deal with some of these problems eventually. Whether we're talking about like systemic racism, or if you don't like that term, like disparate outcomes for people along demographic lines, or police reform, or the war on terror, or runaway government authority. These things are serious issues that do need to be dealt with. And I would like it if we stop calling each other monsters and assholes, so we could actually get something productive done. But if you want to yell at each other, I'm down for that too. So let's go.
Wonderful. Now I'm going to throw it over to Gothix.
All right. So cancel culture, has it gone too far? I don't think it should have started to begin with. I do think that cancel culture is, first of all, it's very comparable to the struggle sessions that they have during Mao's Cultural Revolution in China.
What is happening?
On a base level of what the consequences of cancel culture is, it doesn't leave room for context or nuance. It avoids due process. As far as what is the proper punishment, how long should a punishment be for, was a crime even committed in the first place, things like that. I believe it encourages emotional immaturity. It encourages public shaming, humiliation, and it also encourages entitlement to authority. This idea that random strangers online are deserving of an apology for something that they really have no authority to police in the first place, it basically leads to bullying. It enables this bullying mentality. I also believe that this then discourages critical thinking, because people are kind of reacting on this emotional basis. Now we get down to just seeing things for just a black and white, quite literally.
Cancel culture is
black victim,
I feel like it would
white
start to fall
suspect
apart
equals something, a crime
After watching her
motivated by
talk about this
race.
a couple
That lacks critical thinking to me. I also believe that this doesn't teach conflict resolution. It discourages civil discourse. And there's also no standard operating procedure for cancel culture. So to put this into context, it could
there's
be
no cancel culture manual.
the result of cancel culture could be as simple as someone getting some mean tweets sent at them, or it could be as severe as someone losing their livelihood or them committing suicide because of the nonstop onslaught of emotional trauma. And also, I will say that canceling words are also an issue because that ties into political correctness, thus changing definitions and controlling speech. Cancel culture, to summarize, is a Marxist tactic.
Okay. Also, Gothix,
does
could you? There's a lot of reverb in your mic. Would it be any way for you to correct that?
Oh,
Yeah, she's
someone
running
else
really
told me
hot.
that too. Hold on a second.
Thank you very much. While you do that, though, we have
Going
other people
wacky.
who are going to do intros. Hunter Avalone, I want to throw it over to you.
Yeah, honestly, cancel culture, it is pretty cringy at the end of the day, let's be honest. I think that ultimately...
Also, if you guys want to be a part
can
of the
lead to a lot of
on-stream chat and get
harm on
priority
the
for me
general discourse,
looking at what
but I
you
also think that
type,
we need
you
to
can
be
do
willing
exclamation
to have
point
a
site and join the site chat.
conversation
It's a great place in
about
there.
some of these issues without going the like cancel them route. So for example, I think that there are a lot of people that want to feel special, they want to feel important, they want to feel like they're doing something. And so for them, being maybe still in school, maybe just not having anything else to do in their life, whatever, they find some kind of activism in like canceling the guy who tweeted the N-word when he was 14 or something, like something so delusional, because I've seen stuff like that happen before. But I think we have this issue where like conservatives are so hyper fixated on how bad cancel culture is, they tend to take like the opposite extreme. So like, for example, I mean, let's think about it. We had the Dr. Seuss thing that conservatives claimed was cancel culture. That was not cancel culture at all. That was literally just a private business making a decision. That it wasn't even like from public pressure. We had
Businesses
the
making
Mr.
decisions
Potato
I don't
Head
like is
thing where they
cancel
changed
culture.
it to just being Potato Head for like the overall brand change, and then they were conservatives were like mauling on Twitter about like they're getting rid of it. Oh, they're canceled, Mr. Potato. It's like, I think that we need to sort of find that balance. So like, rather than like you're a racist piece of shit because you said the N-word when you were 14, more like, hey, you're 14, you're a kid, you might not have realized that that's impactful or what that word really kind of like the weight that that word has behind it. But there's also like a conversation to be had about how we don't want to like enable racism if possible, and we want to, you know, act appropriately if people are using slurs and whatnot. Like, I think that there's a way that we can address this that's much more productive than just canceling people on Twitter or trying to get them fired or whatever. Usually, let's be honest, based on like just a little bit of information. It's not usually like this full out thing. But at the flip side, one more thing, I know my time's running out, but the last thing too is that there are also elements of cancel culture
believe there's a YouTube
that I
stream.
think we all agree with. Like, society has to cancel some people. Some people are worth canceling. Like, America, quote unquote, canceled Hitler. Like, there are times that we want to fucking cancel someone, but it's more about like,
cancel Hitler.
is this justified and is it not? And right now, cancel culture does not provide room for that.
I just want everybody to know, I also think Hitler should be canceled. I'm going to throw it now over to Joe Lewis for the last intro before
I
we
think
go
Proud
into
Boys
open
should also
session.
be canceled.
Yeah, I know we usually aren't supposed to talk about people's previous statements on the opening, but I kind of disagree with this idea that Hitler got canceled by the United States. It seemed like historically he deleted his account. So I want to make sure that the record's set pretty clear.
He
Generally
deactivated.
speaking, with cancel culture and the culture war broadly, I think that the outrage, like, there's a few problems I have with it, generally speaking. And that is, the one thing off the top of it is that with the outrage, it's a very neutral phenomenon, right? Like, we had situations where that woman made a really insensitive Africa age tweet. She took a plane ride, came down, was already viral on Twitter. We also see situations like Kyler.
Hitler was kind of problematic. He's neurodivergent and a minor. Stop.
That's all he said. And he was like maybe in high school when it happened, and then people tried to dig that up, and that ended up being its own little cycle. And we see situations now, literally on James Lindsay's Twitter, where he modeled a black and white Lego saying no to sexual grooming. Generally speaking, the pattern is clear, is that whether it be positive or negative outrage, those are the things that drive through algorithms so that people can see those things. And I think that social media sites like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram can do a better job at moderating content, so that's essentially consistent with their terms of service. Another thing that I think is very egregious about it, as we're seeing in Loudoun County, is that when a situation goes viral, things that are just clearly false, because it gets pushed enough, can end up being part of a discourse that it doesn't belong with. What I'm alluding to with Loudoun County is that a student was sexually assaulted in a bathroom. Their father, without any evidence, made the claim that it was a boy wearing a skirt. Then that turned into a trans person sexually assaulting someone in a bathroom, which then transformed into a bisexual biological male wearing a dress assaulting a girl in a bathroom. None of those things
they said that they were either gender fluid or non-binary. It's pretty fucked up.
But the negative outrage towards the situation started getting roped into this idea of a trans predator, and that had nothing to do with the actual situation. There was an issue with safety in the public schools. Now, the problem with that is, as I am finding, is that it's very hard once you have something that is clearly false to correct in real time. And we're seeing this with COVID-19 stuff. But generally speaking, if I were to close the weekend to opening, yes, cancel culture, it's real, but I do think that tech companies, mainly social media companies, can do a better job at actually doing their job in terms of moderating their terms of service and moderating users' accounts. Like, it can't just be Donald Trump that's the Pontius Pilate of the situation. Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to give some shout outs to some people in the crowd tonight. The Surfs TV, I'd like to welcome them into the crowd, as well as the contributor for the Jerusalem Post, Stoic Viper, and many others who have made...
Yeah, essentialization is a really big thing. Another thing that I'm not sure if they're going to talk about too much is the fact that everyone feels like they're the first person to say something on a particular thread. You'll see the same exact thing be said like over and over and over again. Everybody thinks that their 2 cents is the first 2 cents to be added, or that it's needed here. It's important to recognize that still, like, the vast majority of people who see something like this don't interact at all.
Important here is, I don't think this is like a new social phenomena. I do think that we had the ability to cancel in the past. In a tribal setting, that would be like the social equivalent of like exile. The thing that's new is our technological ability to inflict harm on strangers via the digital medium, and also kind of like the scale. If somebody was like, doing something messed up 3,000 years ago, there's really only like 30 people that are going to be mad at you, and they're going to be your immediate tribe. Whereas now you can have hundreds of thousands of people mad at you all at one time calling for blood. So that's kind of like the real difference is the scale. One of the things that both of y'all said, both Gothix and Hunter, I think that was interesting, was you were saying that it seemed like it was driven by people who don't have institutional power, who are desperate to wield some kind of social influence, and as a result, they jump on dog piles. I think that's like a really interesting descriptor for like the social phenomena, and might lead to like a solution for how do we get people engaged in more positive ways rather than engaging in cancel culture. And then I did want to concede to Joe, for instance, like the conservative misidentification of cancel culture. Mr. Potato Head going non-binary probably wasn't cancel culture, although that might have been Hunter. But then the other thing about that too,
I would mix them up too.
How do we keep fucked up stories from spreading so quickly, and then how do we correct the record in such a way that people basically stop being violently shitty? Unfortunately, I spent some time on Twitter today, and people were insisting that it was their moral right to be violently shitty because the person deserved it. And I don't understand how that attitude carries towards anything positive in the future, especially when it's encouraged by some of our people.
Yeah, it's also important to remember this is not new in any way, shape, or form. You know the old saying, like when the lie is halfway across the world, the truth is just putting its pants on.
For that like rage that they might feel, or that like desire to like be activists, kind of just like there's got to be a way to basically take that desire and that rage, because that alone could be a very valuable tool actually in fueling like good political change. But the problem is right now a lot of it is it's just people kind of on the internet, and they can, on top of that being on the internet, they can hide behind their screen. It gets really easy to just start attacking anyone for any reason. So I definitely agree with that. Yeah, I think that there would be a way to, we would have to kind of look at ways to provide a healthier outlet. But I don't know. I think that it's just, I guess, Connor, you said that you agree with the idea that like conservatives are a little bit over the top with what they're calling cancel culture.
I think it can be misidentified sometimes, right? Like, so for instance, like cancel culture to me definitionally would involve some kind of like mob or people coming after your job or your employment, some kind of social pressure might be misapplied.
Gothix is quiet.
And people basically trying to ruin your life and dogpiling you because you did something wrong, some kind of social faux pas, some kind of etiquette slip, or some kind of like a transgression against like, from a conservative standpoint, like, for instance, Joe brought up that news story where it's like, hey, that, this person fucked up and somebody misapplied it in a way to probably intentionally make it go viral. And then same thing with, basically getting dogpiled on Twitter or whatever. It's like, not everybody is caught up on the social norms du jour. And I think that's kind of like the frustration from a conservative standpoint is you can assert something that was like perfectly normal like 5-10 years ago. And it's like, hey, fuck you, you piece of shit. I hope you lose your job. And then that can obviously spiral into some super negative shit. So yeah, like, but I do think conservatives can be extra sensitive to it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I think that it really just
respond, and I want to make sure other people got some time to speak.
She's going into the
I just think that ultimately,
holy shit, she's entering the fucking nether.
Misapplying the term, I kind of feel like, not to get too spicy too quick here, but Gothix, when you mentioned they're changing definitions or whatnot, like, I'm not sure if you know, but like definitions have been changing throughout history. Like definitions are socially constructed, so
words
usually
change.
if definitions are changing, that's just kind of like a normal thing to happen. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's like a form of cancel culture. So I wanted to push back on that a little bit.
Okay, cool. Sorry about my technical problems. By the way, is the reverb too bad? Is it good?
I don't know. It's good enough. It's good.
It's
I
getting
can
better.
with this, yeah.
Okay, cool.
It works.
So changing definitions, that I reject that as, because by that context, that would mean I could change the definition of murder, right? I can just say, oh no, this is cuddling. This is cuddling now. And I know that
which definition are you referring to that's been changed specifically?
Well, and
I'll give you
because of
my
political
favorite one.
correctness.
The definition of racism and this idea that power and privilege need to both be available in order for someone to have the ability to be racist. Thus, me as a black person, I'm apparently by this definition incapable of being racist.
Well, I agree that that's kind of silly, but at the same time, that's not like a definition that's been changed for the sake of political correctness. So what you're referring to is much more of like a academic definition that people try to use for
also,
racism.
that definition is very useful
usually
in certain
rejected
contexts.
or just not even known about by the general population. Like if you look up the definition of racism, it has not been like altered and changed because of political correctness. And again, I want to just like point out that repeatedly throughout history, words have had their definitions changed. The definition for awful changed. The definition for cute, fantastic. I'm literally reading a little list here from like this thing about all these words that have just changed definitions over time. So it's not like a single person is just like, today the definition of murder is that I'm going to be really nice to everybody. So I murdered someone today, guys. When I'm talking about definitions change, and what it sounds like you're talking about is like broadly, societally speaking, definitions changed. But that happens with any society.
So then I would push back and ask, what is the purpose of changing these definitions? What is that intended to do? Why are the definitions we currently have not good enough?
Think about it.
It would purely depend on a case-by-case basis there.
But why would we need to change them if there's no, like, what is the purpose? What does it do?
Well, it depends, again, what you mean by, like, changing definitions. So it's not like we're all going to sit in a room and be like, I vote to change this definition. But it's like, throughout time, the definitions of words change, and the meaning, the way that we interpret them, also change.
I love how this turns into an etymology discussion.
Thing. It's not like, today this word means this kind of thing.
So people say
it's
a word,
more of like how society evolves, how it changes. The definitions of words just kind of change.
If we use a definition, we use racism as an example here, we kind of agree that
how do words work?
There's a lot that encapsulates that word, and it's not exclusively a interpersonal phenomena. And this is basically how end up in social science. And then through social science and other sciences, we found that, like, okay, there's different ways of explaining this word and explaining this phenomena. We're going to use racism as the word that we attach to it, but but add other things like systemic racism, interpersonal racism, structural racism. And those have different definitions and different interpretations when we're trying to observe reality. The problem is, as we saw with critical race theory, is that when you have something that has a very broad definition based on a social science, and then when you try to explain that to individuals and laymen, it can be very difficult to break that down. And even Chris Rufo admitted that, where his purpose for challenging critical race theory was to dilute the word so much so that it's just used as a catch-all for anything involving any type of observation about race in the United States. That's why you get simultaneously people saying, okay, there's like systemic racism is real and that's something we ought to observe, and then another side is saying, well, critical race theory. So I meant to say critical race theory is this idea of like observing structures of power and things of that nature, while at the same time people saying, well, CRT teaches white people to hate themselves because they're white. And then you get the other side going, well, that's not what that means.
This is a really great point because you can flip the whole definition changing on Gothix really quickly. This is a really good point.
Back and forth. We never really get to the context of like why individuals are saying the things that they're saying. And then that just leads to the discourse being very diluted.
Yeah, Joe, can I, this is actually perfect. You kind of put the primer on the situation. This is why literally in my intro, I use the term systemic racism and disparate outcomes separately, because I knew that would mean two different things to two different people, two different audiences that we're basically talking to, assuming that Gothix has like more libertarian or centristy or right-wing audience, right? So basically, I've been swimming in lefty circles for the better part of 6 months, and through these like debates or whatever, like I understand that when we're referring to systemic racism in this space, we're basically talking about like, how does the system work? How does it screw people over? And how does it screw people over disproportionately based off of demographic, right? That's what I understand systemic racism to be.
Thank you, Connor.
But at the same time, I'll walk into a libertarian space or a centrist space or a conservative space, and I'll say, systemic racism, means this definition. And they'll be like, oh, well, to me, this is just the Marxist tactic of changing words and all that kind of stuff. And racism is typically interpersonal. And on top of that, if the system isn't intentionally racist, then how can it be systemically racist? If the point of the law, like, so for instance, like homicide being one of the obvious ones, if homicide is a bad thing, we make a law saying that homicide is bad across the board, and then it screws over certain people disproportionately. How is that law's fault, right? Now that might be like a low resolution photo of the situation, but then that's where for me it's like we get into this fucking fight like almost every single conversation where we're like, you're a racist piece of shit, you're denying reality, you're anti-science, you're anti sociology, you fucking hate knowledge or something like that. And realistically it's like, I don't give a fuck what we call it, right? As long as we acknowledge there's a problem, because if we can acknowledge that there's a problem, then maybe we can start working on a solution. But as we all know, because we're all on twitch.tv and we're all on twitter.com, nobody really gives a fuck about solutions. Nobody really gives a fuck about fixing the situation. They want to fucking make money off of being dicks about the situation. And then that's kind of what pisses me off, especially when it comes to the pundit class, when the fucking, because I consider myself a part of the pundit class, is where like we don't like, okay, so there's disparate outcomes for people for different demographics. What the fuck are we going to do about it when we don't agree on how to run our society? And that's kind of like the question we never even get to.
Right.
Yeah, or even a situation where, and this is the thing that I want to give credit to, because I think that the right wing right now is winning the culture war when it comes to like sort of the political activation aspect. They clearly galvanized school boards across the country and individuals parents who've never been to school board meetings in a way to push these ideas that they're against, like the idea that trans students should be able to use bathrooms based on their gender, their affirmed gender, critical race theory, COVID-19. They're winning that battle in real time. The problem is, as we saw, is that when they finally get to the board meeting and speak their grievances and start participating in the political system, they start finding out that these systems that they're trying to sort of quote unquote take back don't really work in the way that's intended. As an example, to go back to Loudoun County, Beth Bartz is one of the school board members who resigned. And now there's a conspiracy theory that they're calling a conspiracy theory that the school board is just going to insert a member in there that they like in order to continue pushing their agenda. And someone who knows about how ejected board members work in councils and school boards, I'm like, yeah, they vote the interim member in to complete the term because the election is literally next week, and then it's open to the public in the next election cycle. That's just par for the course. And now they're painting that like the school board is so corrupt that they're just going to insert another person that they like. And it's like, of course they're going to do that. If you're in a school board, you want someone in place to make sure they can continue the interim term and then leave it open up to the people to vote again. That's just common procedure. But the lie is that, which has a hint of truth to yield some ground here, is that of course they're going to fill that position with someone they feel is competent, but it's not some cabal that they're going to just shadow do it. Like, it's open to the public, but it's pretty much implied that the person that they want is already tapped.
Okay. Gothix, you haven't had a time to speak in a while. I want to make sure if you want to, you have a chance.
Well, first of all, how's my mic?
Oh, your mic sounds perfect now.
Yeah, all right, cool. That was my fault. User error. Okay, so I want to circle back really quick. I don't remember who said it. It could have been Hunter or Joe. Well, obviously, because you're both on the other team. But someone said something about like the situation with Mr. Potato Head and the cancellations of, I forgot who's the one that said that.
Dr.
The
Seuss.
butter.
Yeah.
The
Okay,
Native
yeah.
American
Dr.
butter.
Seuss cancellation, and then private businesses, stopping that manufacturing of that particular book. I should have added this to my introduction, but all of these topics that we're debating tonight, for my whole argument, are all interconnected, and they need one in order for the other to operate. So in terms of private businesses, I first of all, I would not call that cancel culture. I would call that more of political correctness. But I would say that in that scenario where Dr. Seuss, they pulled the book off the shelves, they said, we're not going to offer that anymore. Yes, it is a private business, but the question is, how did that business come to that conclusion? It was by mob rule. It was by social pressure.
So I don't even believe there was any controversy actually at all involving the Dr. Seuss thing. There was only controversy after it was actually the foundation, the Dr. Seuss Foundation, his family, the person who had legal trust of his works, decided that with the COVID-19 things and with the uptick in hate crimes against Asian Americans, they didn't really like the fact that one of the lesser known Dr. Seuss books had some like pretty outdated depictions of Asian individuals. This was a decision made by the company that this was not mob rule. And the same thing with the Mr. Potato Head thing. They didn't even make him, that wasn't political correctness. They didn't change him to anything. All that they did was change the brand name to Potato Head because it's an umbrella name for Mr. Potato Head and Mrs. Potato Head. That's all that happened. But again, it's a perfect example of how when it comes to the cancel culture thing, or with the conservative side, I guess the outrage about cancel culture, it all seems to be based on like very little knowledge of the actual situation.
Well, can I respond? Am I allowed to do that? I don't know. Okay, cool. So in terms of the business and the foundation coming forward, I checked. I forgot what site it was, but you can check how many books are purchased, and those particular books that they had taken off the shelves hadn't been purchased in years. So
why does it matter?
Well, like I said, it's all interconnected. So in terms of we need to call this book out, we need to stop selling this book. Well, no one was talking about the book. So my question is, what is the purpose of calling it out? But I saw the internet outrage. So I know that was connected to that decision to take it down. As far as the Mr. Potato Head, well, first of all, the previous, that is a form of political correctness. And the other, where Mr. Potato Head, that is a form of indoctrination. Again, another Marxist tactic.
Intersectionality.
Let's let her finish. She said it. Let's let her expand.
Sure.
Very curious.
So I think someone mentioned in here critical race theory. They also have this idea of queer theory in academia. They have other things like anti-racism. And if you actually read the text, all it is political correctness. It is enforcing identity politics, which is basically having you obsessed with immutable characteristics, nothing based on your merit, your values, your beliefs, your qualifications, nothing like that. So
she's walking into
that's
a
pretty
trap.
much it. The Mr. Potato Head is just adding to the.
I need to push back.
something-
No. Sorry,
Sure.
I gotta push back against that hardcore because that's just factually incorrect in every conceivable way. So no, this is not some indoctrination of queer theory. I'm literally reading here right now from AP News just because I wanted to double check because I did a video on it a while ago. All they did, it was announced today that the Potato Head brand name and logo are dropping the Mr. They're proud to confirm that Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head aren't going anywhere and will still remain Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. It was the umbrella name that changed to Potato Head, and then there was still going to be a Mr. Potato Head and a Mrs. Potato Head. There was not a non-binary Mr. Potato Head introduced here. Like, this is not indoctrination. And if that would be like such a reach to claim it was. Okay.
I think that there's something to that, though.
Thank you for agreeing.
I didn't. I just said okay.
Yeah, no, but I think there's something to that there, right? Where it doesn't necessarily matter why they're doing it, because in a way you could say it just is trying to drive profit margins. Like, even if we're looking at the idea of Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, right? Because if I believe, let me just state something off the fact, because my brain's kind of going.
He's already falling to the K defense. K.
I believe that these companies don't give a shit about civil rights issues, political issues, social justice issues. I think they don't give a fuck. They give a shit about profits. And anything that is going to fuck with their money or help drive their money, they're going to do that. So now, on one hand, are there companies that do things with good intent? Absolutely. But as Gothix laid out here in the point of Dr. Seuss, is that sure, you can retire Scrambled Egg Super, you can retire the Cat's Quizzler, you can retire If I Ran a Zoo, but once you retire those books and give a reason why you're retiring those books, there's going to be a desire from individuals to buy out that product where available. It's no different with the Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head. It doesn't matter that Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head are staying. I think that they are well aware that they're staying, and it doesn't even matter the reason, but like whatever, due to algorithms and other things, whatever the narrative is being driven, I would argue that like predominantly the right are going to be like, oh, we got to buy out these potato heads before they're gone forever. We got to buy out these books to make sure they're not thrown to the gulags and burned forever. And do I think that these companies are functioning in a way that they nefariously are trying to do that? Yes and no. Like, I don't necessarily, it's a weird thing, right? Because I don't necessarily think that like every single company is doing this in a way to drive profits for things. I think some of them genuinely believe that these things need to be off the market.
I really want them to hit on the fact that basically in her mindset, if anything changes to be more like modern or even slightly PC, that's wrong. And it has to be like, it has to be forced there. It can't just be like, hey, I think this is a good change. It has to be a mob who's threatening them. I think
you're right that some people use this social justice narratives and then the surrounding outrage in order to capitalize on it. I think that the perfect example is Gillette, where they had the best a man can get, boys will be boys commercial or whatever, where they obviously went with the progressive message. They probably knew there was going to be some level of backlash against it. Regardless of whether or not you boycotted it or bought a shitload of them, there was name recognition in the market. Whereas before, who gives a shit about Gillette, right? But then this is what's interesting to me. Is where you said the right wing is winning the culture war, maybe because they're better positioned to use institutional power. But I think what feels nefarious about it, or what feels shitty about it, is it feels inevitable. Because if you look at corporate media, or if you look at toy companies or clothing companies or anything like that, it all feels like they're you can call it a virtue signal or you can call it genuine. It seems like they're all on the same step with like the progressive message. So that's kind of where I can understand the sense of frustration from a conservative perspective, where you're just like, yo, like, what the fuck? Everything is progressive right now. It's everywhere. It's in our media. It's in our toys. It's in our marketing. It's in our TV shows. It's absolutely everywhere. And it doesn't feel organic. It doesn't feel like people are demanding it. It feels like it's being generated. And then that's kind of like it's being put down onto people versus people demanding the product. And so I have another point, but
well, I mean,
I want to leave it.
I want them to touch on how they're just kind of out of touch. If you look at like general American social trends, conservatives are just way out of touch. If you ask your average American, they're perfectly fine with these things. And also they lean slightly progressive socially.
My concern is that I don't think that the parents that are galvanized in Virginia are being politically activated in a way that I think is productive. I think they're being used for nefarious means to perpetuate lies within the right wing. And Virginia now is the center point to what the GOP is going to use in the midterms. And that's a big concern that I have, because they're getting everything that they want. They might get the governor's seat. I mean, Glenn Youngkin's leading almost by a 10-point margin now in the elections next week. But what's going to happen with Glenn Youngkin when he's dealing with a Democrat state legislature? He's just going to be blocking Democrat shit. And it's going to be the same shit that we have in New Jersey. So it's like, I'm always like, okay, you get what you want politically, but then what's the next step? Because now all these parents are galvanized. So it's like,
Hunter?
Sorry.
Yeah, I just really quickly wanted to just for my own stream correct some misinformation that Gothix was saying before. So first of all, when we go to the
More righty
Dr. Seuss
misinformation.
thing, I just had to double check this again. Actually, there was not any big backlash that led to this. They literally said the decision was made after consulting experts and teachers. Lastly, I looked it up, and after they actually canceled those books, multiple Dr. Seuss books that were quote unquote politically correct actually spiked, and the company made a fuck ton more money solely off of just like the controversy, and some people liked it, some people didn't. But either way, this
you
was
can read them
proven to
online.
be a beneficial business move at the end of the day also. So just wanted to correct that misinformation. We can go on to the next topic.
Well, I do want to make you called out Gothic, so I want to make sure that if she wants the time to respond, she can.
But she just said K
hold
last
on.
time. I
So
don't think she
first
had
of all,
anything to
we're
say.
debating the semantics. We're debating the definition pretty much. We're debating what occurred versus not looking at the consequence. All I'm asking is, what is the purpose of canceling these things? If it's old stuff, it was made in the 1950s and nobody reads this book, like what is the purpose of canceling?
gave the
There's
purpose.
a point to this.
They already gave the purpose.
She
though.
keeps calling
They
it
said the
cancel.
purpose was
and you
because-
believe them.
Well, yes, because I don't live in delusion. But yeah, so they said that they thought that the books were hurtful and that they portrayed people that were wrong, and that in the midst of the controversy with the COVID-19 thing completely made sense. Again, this benefited the company, so we know the reason, and we also know it wasn't because of anything to do with a mob, but it was a decision that was made after consulting experts and teachers. I'd be happy to send you this BBC article if you want. I don't know. Do you not trust the BBC? I don't know.
Canceling is just doing things that she doesn't like.
No, thank you. You can keep your article. You can continue, Dylan.
Okay. We're
the
going to go
fuck
into the
is
next
this?
topic, and it is on identity politics. The question is
Lord.
simple. Do you believe identity politics pushes people towards extremism? It's a specific question, but if you want to be somewhat broad in your answer, you can be. I'm going to go with intros. We're going to start with Gothix this time in the top right-hand corner.
All right. So as I was saying before, all of these topics tonight are going to be interconnected. So in terms of identity politics, it is exactly identical to what occurred under the Cultural Revolution of Mao Zedong, where people,
fuck is
by the
happening,
way,
man?
millions upon millions of people died. I just have to add that. Individuals were
Why are we-
classified
why are we
within 5
comment posting?
classes of red and 5 classes of black according to their wealth and class status before the revolution. Identity politics purposely neglects diversity of thought to push specific political gains by the facilitation of social justice. And what do I mean by this? Black lives matter, but not black Republicans, not black conservatives. Just look at the rhetoric of how people that follow this movement treat black conservatives or people like that. Another example, this trans.
The fuck is happening, man? If a black conservative got fucking killed, BLM would be like, that's still bad. If a black conservative, if George Floyd was a black conservative, they'd still think that that's bad, and they'd still, even if I don't like you, I don't want you to be strangled to death, man. They're such a victim.
Who absolutely do not subscribe to that. So again,
You're mean
making
to
the
me.
point that
I'm like George Floyd, you're mean
this
to me.
identity politics, the purpose of it is to push a specific type of identity, not a broad spectrum. But that's my opening.
Okay. Next is going to be Joe Lewis.
Identity politics is fine. I firmly believe that
Hit on
extremism.
right-wing white
hot
identity
take,
politics.
coldest
Wanna see
take of the night. Maybe
Wanna
the
see
hottest
it.
and coldest, but extremism creates extremism, right? So we have in the United States right now anti-government sentiment, anti-authority sentiment, the idea of infringement on rights and government overreach based around a lot of things like COVID-19, school boards, local governments and sort of like too much by government, big government. We have conspiracy theories and controversial political commentary around the 2020 election, rejections or objections to multiculturalism, embraces of populism, and then like broadly speaking, the culture war trinity based on CRT, COVID-19, and gender affirmation. The right tend to call it queer theory or trans theory or gender theory, but they're all interconnected
Gay
in
people
that,
theory.
like, yes, we can agree
Homo theory.
that we have our politics are influenced based on who we are. So me as a black, incredibly cis male is going to be different than Connor, who is a like. I get in trouble when I assume the race of white people. So I'm going to make an assumption that Connor is white. Maybe he's native, LSP. I don't know. Or Latino. I don't know. But
White Latino.
It's these things.
Represent.
All these identifiers that we have influence our politics because our identifiers influence our relationship with these things around us. And I think that's how we navigate. My concern, however, though, is that there's this idea that I don't know how to word. Nah, I'll save it for the later. I'll save. That's all I got for now.
I really want them
next
to
is
hit
gonna
on
be over to
the Republicans'
Counterpoints.
white identity politics. I really want that. Hunter and Joe need to hit on that.
Oh, there you go.
It'll
No,
like
hey,
completely
hey,
undercut.
you gotta give me a second to
argument.
click on the mute button. Jesus Christ, don't call me a pro streamer yet. Holy shit. So, anyways, does identity politics drive extremism? Yeah, absolutely. But I kind of can't wait for 2050 where white people are a minority. That way I can bitch about my station in life as fucking you don't understand my pain because I'm a fucking minority inside the United States of America. I'm very excited to say that. Like January 1st, 2050, that's going to be the first thing I fucking say. Good morning, babe. How's it feel to be
We're
a minority
oppressed.
in America? And then identity politics is obviously a double-edged sword. It can be used for good. It can be
The
used
puppy
for
whoppy.
ill. I think when what we're used to is on like Twitch or Twitter or other spaces where it's like, you don't understand my lived experience, therefore you need to shut the fuck up and you cannot have an opinion on this subject because of your demography. I would see that as an absolute toxic way to use your identity. What I would see as a non-toxic way to use your identity is say, hey, listen, there's multiple variables that go into a person's personality and how they're viewed by society and how they're viewed on life. Here are some of the characteristics that I think make up my identity. Here's been my experience.
describing
This is an experience that
intersectionality
that I share with people who share this variable with me. So while it's not representative of
Which is
like a
identity
pure,
politics.
like, you know, predictable algorithmic formula, this is something that we can observe through demographics and statistics and shared anecdote and all that kind of stuff. And we should address the problems and try to optimize everybody's lives. That's how I think identity politics could be used positively. As a matter of fact, to all the conservatives listening, I actually ask you to invert intersectionality on its head and start clamoring for equal male representation in female-dominated spaces using identity politics. Let's go ahead and get 50% male representation in education and into the medical field. Let's go ahead and use our identities, not necessarily as a weapon, but as a cudgel. Because fuck it, memes are memes. But I'll leave it there and leave it for the open.
Memes or memes?
let
Anybody
the
want to
memes be
take
dreams.
hold of the starting point here?
Hey, wait, I was never given an intro,
Oh, sorry, Hunter. Okay, throw it
but
over
it's
to you.
okay. Thankfully, I don't have a.
Anti-white racism.
So
What?
first, my name's spelled wrong, and now it's. This is anti-hunter racism right here. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, this isn't something that I am super like touchy about with identity politics. I really do agree with what Connor said, partially about how it can be a double-edged sword. There's absolutely times where you might be able to find some like commonality or community within like a shared identity or something like that. But I do disagree heavily with the idea of like, you're a white guy, so you're not able to speak about like that kind of shit is so fucking toxic, and it totally does harm discourse. But one more thing I want to
A
add
cudgel
is
is a
that
weapon.
any conservative that claims about identity politics, I hope they're also willing to condemn the likes of Candace Owens and other black conservatives who will weaponize identity politics like a motherfucker. You will hear it all the time. I can't be a white supremacist. I'm black. I can't be this. I'm black. Wait,
I have a
you
black
would say
friend.
this to a black woman? How many times have you heard Candace Owens say that one? Like, so I think that all the time we just have
I
to
can't
sort
be
of
racist.
again,
I'm dating a black
find that
person.
middle ground. But yes, ultimately, identity politics can lead people towards quote unquote extremism. But again, we need to look at what that means by extremism. So, like, if people are extreme about wanting to end systemic racism, I don't know what that would look like. Would that be like extreme as in violence? Because I wouldn't be in favor of that. But obviously, I want people to be extreme enough to actually advocate for like good change and good cause.
Okay. Is there anyone who now wants to take a hold of the conversation to start us off?
Me.
No, yeah.
Here we
Thank
go.
you. Thank you. Cute doggy,
Watch out,
by the
everyone.
way.
Thanks. It's called a pro gamer move. I learned it from Destiny.
Awesome. Get that sub. Okay. I guess I'm going to start with Joe. Joe, first, I want to know, because in your opening, you called yourself a cis male. And,
Yes.
okay.
I'm incredibly straight. Very straight.
Fabulous.
Well,
So
cis
glad.
and straight are
But I'm curious, have you
different.
ever considered if
Having
you
sex
had
with
to
men?
say which group of people, which body of people in terms of political leaning subscribe to this idea of saying I am cis this, what would you say?
What do you mean? Like in terms, so like to reword your question, so I know I'm understanding here. You're saying that like which group of people in the United States would affirm themselves to be cis?
Yeah. So, let me clarify. For example, I would say that I'm straight and I'm a woman. But nowadays, you might hear I am a cis white woman in some instances, depending on who you ask. So we're adding that additional identifier. So I want to know would you say that this is something that is shared amongst all political parties? Is it more of a left thing? Is it a right thing? Like, what would you, based on your judgment?
I mean, cis is just an antonym to transgender, if I'm recalling correctly. I just use cis because I've always used cis. I think you're trying to allude to the idea that the term cis might almost exclusively be used on the left, but I don't think you nor I would have like enough evidence to even quantify that. Like we have enough observable reality to maybe go like, hey, maybe this word is used in lefty spaces, but I'm sure cis is used everywhere, not just exclusively.
And also, just because you don't use the word cis doesn't mean you don't base your identity on being cis. A lot of right wingers who are like, I have massive nuts, I have a lot of testosterone. They are affirming themselves as cis.
Who would refer to themselves as a cis man. They would just say, I'm a man, I'm a dude. So that's what I'm getting at, because I believe that type of language ties into the queer theory where it pushes a very specific political narrative.
Specific.
Can you elaborate on
what does that mean?
Go ahead.
Yeah, can you elaborate on a little bit?
Elaborate?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know what she means.
So going back to my example of my opening statement on identity politics, where I said that identity politics focuses on immutable characteristics instead of a diversity of thought, and that is intentional because, for example, trans lives matter, but then I can go to Blair White's channel and see a slew of hateful anti-trans stuff in there. So it's clear that it's just a very specific thought process.
Wait.
Well, I would push back on the idea that it's immutable characteristics, because we all have different political ideology that I wouldn't say is an immutable characteristic. Like I, for the longest time, thought there was only two genders up until I was like 25 or 26. I also believed that the clothes that women wore was analogous to their likelihood of getting sexually assaulted. These were all beliefs that I believed until I had basically a mountain of individuals in my space to push back on like these ideas are not really consistent with the reality in society and stuff like that. So like the opinions that we hold, I think are not immutable characteristics. They're just characteristics of who we are. But those ideas that I had definitely came from my socialization for sure.
Yeah.
I'm going to, I'm sorry, go ahead. You can go.
I was hoping I could cut in a little bit on that too, because the term cis, I totally know what you mean. Again, it kind of is like, it is very derivative from more academic college sort of spaces. So it's quite possible that, there might be people like in rural areas that aren't familiar with that word and maybe don't use it in the same way. But that one doesn't mean that it's like not a word, because it is actually like a word and it does mean something. But also everybody has their own labels and ways that they identify themselves. So like some people call themselves conservative. Some people identify as Christian. Some people identify as politically homeless. Like these identities, these labels are across the board. It's just that maybe you'll see people in lefty spaces who, since they have an understanding of like what cis means, they would just be like, yeah, I describe myself as cis. Whereas people over on the right might be like, well, I describe myself as like a Christian nationalist who like they have their own labels and ways of identifying also. So I don't think it's fair to make it seem like it's just this like left wing thing.
Yeah,
Well, just to
I
be clear, to
pushback.
answer Gothix a bit more directly, I have
yeah.
no problem with either or. Like, if somebody identifies themselves as straight, it's like, cool. If I, like, me, I use the word cis because I teach, so I have to use, like, a little bit different language when I'm describing certain things because I never really know, like, what groups of individuals I have myself in front of, so I have to keep things a little bit more inclusive as I can. But yeah,
Oh, for understanding
person that
queer
we
theory,
should-
basically imagine it's like critical race theory. It's like
Bring it over to Connor, who hasn't talked yet.
institutional racism, but for gay people.
Cool.
There you go.
I actually had a brain fart, so this is going to be very short. But I will say that I do believe that, again, we're talking about immutable characteristics. I have no problem with people identifying. I do not care. It does not matter to me. It's just nothing. So the problem is that when people are identifying as something, it's now leading into like, this is the reality. This is the new reality. It is so bizarre to me, for example, to hear that passports are going to have gender X on it. And also, I would push back on Joe and say, yes, there are two genders. And I'll pull a page right out of Dave Chappelle's book and say, every man in this room came out of a vagina. But that's all I have to say.
And that would be
I mean, that's not
completely
true. C-sections
gender,
are
by
I
the
can
way.
give y'all more fuel.
Here we go. Let's party.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So number one. So just keep that in your mind because
Yeah, and a lot of the anti-trans stuff in Blair's comments are not
a little bit. Give you some
lefties.
more to sink your teeth into. All right. So number one, conservatives politics weaponizing their identity. Well, I mean, we may have started it. You may have started it. Who gives a shit? The cat's out of the bag. Okay, where everybody's gonna be weaponizing identity for the rest of the fucking time, which is why I'm super excited about 2050, where I get to fucking be a minority in America, so I can fucking leverage that as a part of my I'd poll and fucking talk some shit on the internet.
Yeah, her getting
It's gonna
upset
be
about
fucking
X
great.
gender
I'm
sounds
super
like cancel
excited about
culture to me.
One of the things that is interesting, though, about how we conceptualize identity is this concept called like identifiers versus prophilicity. I'm not that familiar with the subject, but basically it's like a sociological theory that says that like some people use identifiers in order to identify attributes about themselves that they feel like reflect their reality. If you're talking about like biological sex, or if you're talking about skin tone, or if you're talking about racial categorization or something like that, they feel like there's something that's describing something that exists in the world. The digital age, though, this is the part of the sociological theory that I haven't really studied, is that we are now used to creating profiles. When you're talking about social media or video games or anything like that, you can kind of customize the features, benefits, and characteristics of your character. And this is something that's kind of opened up in like the personal space as well. It's like, who do you want to be is almost as important of a question as who are you? And we kind of have the tension between these two concepts. And that's where like language conveying information is probably the crux of what we're talking about, because very specifically it's like I'm kind of libertarian on like the gender shit too. So it's like, man, I can disassociate biological sex and manhood and womanhood, but men, women, non-binary folk, right? But then we get into that like neo-pronoun shit where, Gothix was talking about like a billion fucking genders and shit. And it's like, what does a neo-pronoun, what information does that convey that he, she, or they does not convey?
I would actually agree with that, by the way. Like, that's one of the reasons I'm not in favor of neo-pronouns.
Right. And then that kind of gets into this thing where before, when I was traveling in right-wing spaces, no offense, leftists, but you don't know how to communicate your ideas very well. You kind of call everybody fucking assholes. And then basically, if we're not up to snuff on every single fucking thing that's come out on Twitter, Tumblr, or Twitch recently, then we're bigoted fucking assholes who just want to make everybody miserable and commit suicide. Whereas for me, it's like, I know I've traveled in enough leftist spaces that I know that y'all fight about this shit. So that's like the interesting part of this entire conversation, where it's like, you don't even fucking agree on any of this shit. But then that's where it's like, where do you get the cultural authority or the balls to say, like, hey, this is how it is now, and if you don't agree, shut the fuck up. And that's oftentimes the energy that you catch when you're not down with whatever's going on.
What?
I got
Sometimes,
nothing. I'm not gonna 3v1. I'm not gonna 3v1. I'm not gonna die on this hill. I don't want to get canceled.
I'm like, sometimes people, the thing is like, I don't know. I mean, I call people stupid sometimes, but I guess that just kind of would be on our
aimless sack of shit, Hunter.
Yeah, you're right.
Well,
I'm sorry. I should be canceled. Yeah.
Joe, you want to?
Well, it's easy to understand neopronouns a little bit like this. Is that he, she, they, or whatever? They just don't feel connected to those pronouns, and that's like the easiest thing to like understand there, and that's like kind of it, and that's why they pick a new one.
And parents, because one thing that I'm always worried about is companies and institutions using people's identifiers as a means to push political ideas when it's very clear that these groups don't give a shit about them. Examples that I can use that like might upset a few liberals out there is like the NAACP, basically Black Lives Matter Incorporated.
Oh yeah, listen, I'll shout out all subs, and we'll be giving like treats and stuff once we're done. I love you.
Up top, it's the same frustration where it's like we know that there are. I'm going to use like to load this a little bit. Like we know that Black Americans get brutalized in different parts of the system. And unfortunately, these organizations that are sort of trying to herald this idea that Black Lives Matter don't give a shit about Black people. And then what's frustrating is that this is something that I think that conservative Black Americans can unify with Black leftists, and that we're both saying the same thing, but just at a different angle. Like we both recognize that these organizations like Black Lives Matter Incorporated, like the NAACP, generally speaking, don't give a shit about Black people. We know that the policies they try to implement and try to bring forth to the table is just another example of just like liberal bullshit that's not going to lead to any type of change. But then when it's like, okay, well, why don't we like sort of coalition build and galvanize on this idea to try to breach some type of change, then we get into like these weird disagreements. So it's like, why can't we just fight on this unified thing? But yeah.
Yeah, I actually have a direct response for this, if I may. So
George Bush doesn't care about Black people.
Oh my God, you like nailed a problem right on the head, which is the organization's pundits and commentariat class pretend to care about issues in order to profit from the conflict by making money off of people fighting, which is fine. Again, like I love to fucking fight. I'm on this goddamn panel. I'm on the fucking Hippy Dippy. I'm on Prime Kai Weekly. I love fighting about politics. It's one of my favorite things to do. But then how do we capitalize the actual energy and the actual problems that we're facing and turn it into like public momentum that actually has some level of change? And this is where I would say the libertarians or the anarchists or the liberals, small L liberals, they have an advantage because they say that it has to happen on the ground. It has to happen in communities. You have to go out into your local community. And if you want, kids to be more proficient in an academic setting, then you have to be either a volunteer or a teacher. If you want law enforcement to be better, then you have to become a part of those institutions. And then that's kind of where, I love everybody on this panel, but there are some very wealthy leftist commentators who say, no, don't go into your local community. The only way that we can achieve our goals is if we execute landlords, business owners, and have a socialist revolution.
Listen,
and
just say Mike. It's okay.
Like,
you can call him out.
Fuck these motherfuckers. They're radicalizing tens of thousands of young people into basically a daily diet of 8 hours of arguing on Twitter and then thinking that they're going to better their lives in some kind of bloody revolution in the next 30 years.
Sparks is going to come down from heaven.
Yeah, well, I think Republicans are doing this
rise
right
again.
now.
Unfortunately, I agree with you.
Parents. I strongly believe Republicans are doing this right now with parents. Where if you look at these school board meetings, and the only reason why we got that DOJ memo in the first place is because there are literal parents and community members advocating for the violence of other school board members.
Did Hassan say this? As far as I know, no.
Then,
but you know,
I don't know. Like, for example, there was a school board meeting in Florida that I watched on my stream where it's literally just a civilian yelling at their superintendent, holding his gun on the ready. And it's like, why the fuck are you? First off, why? I get it, Florida. I get it. But why do you have your firearm in a school board meeting? And then when you're talking to the superintendent, as you're arguing with him, talking about how he's going to take we're going to take this school back, you're holding your firearm. And then there's just a sheriff flanked on one side, a police officer flanked on the other. And then it's just like, well, this is totally
also, you guys may not have heard of this story, but in Arizona, there was a group of people whose kids, the school told the kids to wear a mask, and so they literally pulled up to the school in trucks with like fucking those like zip tie handcuffs and threatened to arrest the principal. So, you know,
in their institution feel safe, they start saying like, well, look at that, there's this government overreach, you're just painting parents as extremists. It's like, that's not the reality here. Like, it's very clear that in some areas in the United States, like school board members and superintendents are not safe in their buildings. And then when they try to make the measures to try to like solve that problem, then people start getting upset.
I want to throw it over to Gothix, then Hunter, and then we got to start wrapping up with outros and such. I'll be right back.
Okay, do you
By the
mind-
way, everyone behave. I need to use the bathroom. What were you saying, Gothix?
he's gonna shit himself.
I was gonna shove 2 questions in here for 2 different people. Is that okay?
You know what? Sure, but then the outros are just going to need to be people plugging themselves, okay?
Okay. I mean, okay, that'd be cool. I wanted to know, Joe, really quick. So you're mentioning the school board and how their safety is on the line, and parents are really going after them. I'm just curious. Do you know why they're going after the school board? Because I'm a very
They're
analytical
radicalized.
person, and I like to understand the why.
COVID-19, gender affirmation, and CRT.
Okay.
Period.
Do you understand in terms of I can sympathize, or are you like, hold, these parents are nuts?
I can't sympathize. I sympathize with them in a few reasons. The one reason is I think that it's unfortunate that these parents are now getting manipulated by individuals, whether that be individuals on Twitter like Chris
Eating
Rufo or James
Washington's.
Lindsay, Republicans like Glenn Youngkin, Donald Trump, and so Matt Gaetz, and a bunch of other individuals, Marjorie Taylor Greene. I have sympathy towards that, where these parents, some of them, have very clear grievances, but their grievances towards the system are being manipulated for political gain. That I don't agree with.
I'm not sure I'm following. I just want to, by the way, I'm going to keep my closing arguments. I'm only going to stick to Joe for this one. So Joe, critical race theory, are you in favor of it?
It's not being taught in public schools, and it's up to the school curriculum to decide.
It's not.
It is.
It's not.
It's not.
It
Depends how
definitely
you're
is.
defining critical race.
It would depend.
Critical
Yeah, it
race
also
theory
depends
is
how you
when you
define
say
it. What
black
is
people were
true
oppressed.
is that public schools are using works from Ibram X. Kendi and Robert DiAngelo in certain topics. That is true. But the actual things like CRT introduction, things by Kimberly Crenshaw and similar are not being taught in public schools.
Okay. I don't want to get too caught up in definitions and semantics and all that stuff. So I'm just going to say, like, regardless of what the definition is,
Amazing.
I would be very cognizant of how parents are reacting. To me, it looks like a parent is trying to protect their cub, just like any parent would. You'd want to protect your child. So then I ask myself, why? What are
Yeah, but
they
they can be
teaching
incorrect.
exactly? They're teaching black kids to be victims. They're teaching them to victimize
hate
themselves. And then you
this
also
so
have
much.
on the other side of it, this idea of identity politics and power and privilege, and now white kids have to feel bad about themselves. There is a woman in my home state that spoke to the school board, and she, the school board is suing her for asking for more
I'm aware of the case.
clarification.
I'm aware of the situation.
Yeah.
I'm
So
aware of the situation.
and that is again a Marxist tactic where they put pressure and they
fuck does that
intimidate
mean?
people that are opposition.
Well,
that is-
something again, like I don't want to get into semantics of her situation. 'cause I
We
haven't
all
read
know
up
that
on it,
the
but I'm
right wing
almost
does
certain
not
that the two,
intimidate their opposition,
Freedom of
right?
Information Act and their lack of paying when they did FISA requests. So they obtained the information, and then I'd have to look it up if I'm remembering. If we're talking about the same
Yeah,
thing,
they are protecting
the
their kids
situation
from
was
understanding
they
racism.
did a request of the Freedom of Information Act. The school board gave them that information, and then they didn't pay for that request. And the request was upwards of like $4,200 or something like that they didn't pay. So the school board sued for that payment. But again, we might be talking about a different thing.
Hunter,
Not to,
quickly,
like,
and then we
self-talk.
have to do outros.
All right, I'll address 2 things I heard earlier. One, about Black Lives Matter, the organization. I agree that it is definitely far from an ideal, what an ideal organization would look like. However, I think that's by saying they don't care about black people or that, just kind of disregarding them entirely. I don't entirely agree with that. I think that at the very least, the Black Lives Matter organization helped to mobilize some of the overall movement that we saw. And with that came more public pressure to actually address some of these systemically racist issues that have been being talked about a lot. But it's now because of this that we're literally seeing legislation being brought forward. Biden's bipartisan bill, for example, is actually investing money in a black community that was screwed over by a policy that wasn't intended to be racist, but ended up fucking over black people disproportionately. So they're actually going and looking to try to ameliorate some of this systemic racism, partially because Black Lives Matter pushed this into the spotlight and got everyone talking about it. So that was the first thing. The second thing I wanted to bring up was when it comes to the critical race theory thing.
An ideal organization is an organization that agrees with me. Sorry, I don't make the rules.
Probably silly that I wouldn't agree with. And it definitely also depends on how it's being taught. But I can reference a CRT scholar and professional who literally said himself that CRT should never be used, or it should not be taught in a way that is disparaging people for being white or whatnot. So if that were the case, that would actually be a contradiction of what critical race theory and how it's supposed to actually be taught.
Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify that.
We got to do outros now because we only have 4 minutes left before I have to move this to the next show I'm doing. So I'm going to start with Connor. Let's try to keep it short and sweet.
Okay, my name is Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints. I am a science fiction, political philosophy nerd. Back. I'm a Marine veteran, a law enforcement veteran. I love Warhammer 40,000. So if you like politics, debates, science fiction, movie breakdowns, violence.
So I think here we'll let them do their outros. I'm going to be hopping on with Dylan again in a moment. But yeah, I mean, I don't. The fact that the Gothix just went to the K argument so quickly was so. It was so like strange to me in the first topic. You know what I mean? Who says 40,000 instead of 40K? Someone who really knows what's up. It sucks they didn't get to be able in the second time they didn't get to be able to talk about things like the white identity politics that the right's going into. I mean, remember, like even Charlie Kirk was talking about how we need to like fight back and put like Trump supporters on the border because like Biden's trying to bring in brown people to stop like to destroy the white majority. Like, come on.
That was terrible. I was so angry. All right.
I guess we can fight.
There was so much Marxism in that one for me. But.
My turn?
Gothix? Yep, it is your turn.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for having me. This was very nice. I enjoyed this little back and forth. You can follow me, Gothix TV on YouTube and on Twitter. If you're interested, I actually interviewed someone that grew up during the Communist Revolution under Mao Zedong's regime. If you'd like to check it out, it's on my channel. Also, if you want to learn about how identity politics is weaponized, I would recommend Color Communism and Common Sense. And if you're curious about the tactics that I mentioned, you can read Rules for Radicals. And that's
Sololinsky. And I would like to thank everybody for coming on today. I know it's sometimes difficult to challenge yourself.
Cool. I am going to. Here, 1 second. I want to make sure.
Back on my show at any point in the near future. See you guys later.
Bye.
Yeah, take care. Oh.
Get out of here, Joe. Get out of here.
Shoot.
Thank you. Denabo, you can bring in the commentators as we do a short intro before the next.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Fuck. I'm gonna be running to the intermission. Look at me.
Oh, there you are, Shark. How's it going?
Hey, what's going on? Can you see me?
No, not at the moment. Can't see either of you at the moment.
There we go.
So, What do you guys think of that? How do you guys think that went?
You want to start, Chud?
Yeah, sure. I think that, I think kind of what I thought at the start kind of played out. Counterpoints was kind of the wild card to a degree. I don't think he went along quite as far as Gothix went with some of her points. I think that Gothix, when she starts talking about like Mao and stuff like that, her audience are going to love that kind of thing. But I think people that are watching that aren't really into her are going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? So I think that she really isolated herself at points in that conversation, which didn't really do many favors to that side. I think that Joe and Hunter did very well. Joe needs to be a bit more confident to bite the bullet on certain things sometimes, but Hunter did a great job of pushing back and debunking, some of Gothic's point there to, in many cases, no retort.
Okay. By the way, fun fact about Mao Zedong. Did you guys know in the chat that once Mao offered Henry Kissinger 10 million Chinese women? Anyway, on to Shark Zero.
Hey, well, so what happened is kind of like what I was expecting. So Joe was in there a lot, but he was a lot less confrontational than Hunter was. Hunter really was in there and hit a lot of points and hit back on Gothix pretty hard. And when she just went okay, like a couple of times, that's not a really good look. Talking about Marxism and like the whole like this is a Marxist tactic, you really lose people. Even if there's like some credibility there, which I'm not saying that I'm granting, I'm just saying if there's some credibility there, it's like us going and talking to a conservative and being like, oh yeah, this is like Nazi tactics. That doesn't come over very well to just about anyone.
Well, to be fair, though, nobody ended up pushing back on it. Nobody said, well, how is it communist or how is it Maoist or how nobody actually pushed back on her Mao statements during this. And there was 3 people in there who could have possibly done that.
Yeah.
Sure. But at the same time,
she brought it up multiple times, too.
Yeah, I think I think sometimes when in these sorts of debates there are other things that you can focus on, and when sometimes your opponent can say something and that can just hang, and if that just hangs in people's mind, that it can just look bad in and of itself without pushback. That's more of a rhetorical thing than like an actual debate thing, but yeah, Joe being like the right's winning the culture war in schools, I don't think many people resonated with that too much. But there's a lot of fighting in schools right now, so I can definitely see that. One thing that Gothix brought up that I really wish people hit on is that she was kind of moving into the direction, especially when it came into cancel culture, that everything that changes in this way, especially when it came to the Dr. Seuss thing, it has to change because there's some sort of mob out there somewhere with pitchforks and torches ready to destroy this company or this person or something, and that's why this change happens. It can't be through anything internal or any like change in society just generally that people are trying to catch up with. People didn't hit on that, but yeah, that was another thing.
Question. This was Gothic's first time on any hippy dippy programming. When I was at Freer Fest in Tennessee, Kat was able to make the connect down there. We were able to get her onto the program. Very happy that we were able to meet and do that. How do you think she did and was able to mold to the platform and mold to the type of show we have here? And how do you think she performed for a first timer?
For a first timer, I don't think that she did horribly. I really don't think so. The environment when you're like on a big stage and you have a bunch of people and it's this sort of format, it can trip a lot of people up, especially people who do things like video essays or essays or like videos where they just talk at the camera and they have their points and they just go off. It's harder for them to translate over. I think she did like an okay job. There are some things that didn't go too well, once again, where Hunter like hit back on a point and instead of retorting, she was just like, okay. That's not a really good look. Whether you agree with.
Here's
her
a question:
anything.
do you think when Hunter Avalone says, "Well, that was completely factually inaccurate" before starting the statement, what do you think of that? Do you think that's good rhetoric to start off with something like that, or do you think you should go straight into like the, "Hey," just like explaining how it's wrong?
I think it can be. I think it can be good rhetoric. But here, Chud, you can go. I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, no worries. I think that, to be honest with you, I think that was good, and I think that in this kind of environment, you're better to go harder on Gothix, because like I'm trying to be as unbiased as I can here, but in reality, if you started to ask Gothix, okay, can you quote or tell me when Mao said X, Y, and Z that backs up what you're saying, or you keep saying it's Marxist, can you point me to what Marxist text you think backs up what you're saying? she's going to start to crumble very quickly. And those moments that you're talking about where she's going, oh, and backing down, like she does it in such a way as to still ingratiate with the audience the idea that she's like, you know, Hunter's saying there's a BBC article, she's saying keep your article. You know, it looks like a loss to most people, but to an audience, they're probably going to really enjoy that kind of, you know, mentality, if you like. I think more moments like that, though, would really start to sort of, you know, disintegrate maybe some of the trust even within her own audience. If every time she's pushed on something, she doesn't have an answer. So I think there definitely could have been more of that and more aggression, I think, from the lefties.
One last question before we get into the show that's about to happen, the main event, the show that everybody has been waiting for, which is going to be Destiny versus Infrared over the topic of should people vote for Democrats on the topic of electoralism. Quick question. Both of you had questions about how Connor would fall on the political spectrum in this debate, since many times he straddles the line. Do you think, how do you think how he did compared to your predictions?
You can go, Chad.
Okay, sure. To be honest with you, I think that I think Connor was acutely aware that he didn't want to get into a 3v1 situation. And I noticed points when Gothix was speaking and Connor was noticeably quiet. So I think his strategy, you know, I thought maybe he'd side a bit more with like the lefties in certain points. And I think maybe he tried to build a few more bridges. But generally, I think he just kind of stayed quiet when Gothix was talking and kind of didn't go along with her, you know, rather than push back against her. So I think he played quite a smart game in order to avoid disintegrating the relationship between himself and Gothix, which is always a bad look on these sorts of panels.
Okay, and Shark, quickly before we talk about the main event.
Sure. I think Connor, like Chud said, kept his mouth shut. A lot of the times when there was a lot of back and forth between Gothix and like Hunter or Joe, and I feel like she was kind of like left by herself a little bit. At the same time, I'm not sure necessarily what he was thinking there. He definitely didn't want it to be like, oh, I'm ganging up on my teammate in these certain things. But I think he played about what I was expecting. Acquiesce on some points and go hard on others.
Okay. Now, the Hippy Dippy Championship. Destiny, in the controversial decision, was decided to be the Hippy Dippy Champion after Vosh vacated the title due to inactivity in the ring. It is now going to be Infrared versus Destiny in about 8 minutes to decide who's going to be the new champion. The topic is, should people vote for Democrats? Topic of an electoralism. So, Chud, Shark, any last minute predictions for how this match is going to go? How you think what's going to decide who comes out on top, and who you ultimately think will be the victor?
I think I think it will kind of come down to a lot of rhetoric. Hans can talk, but sometimes he can get a little bit heated. I really feel like if Destiny pokes him enough, and if he gets irritated enough, it'll be a bad look for him. He could be like angry, he could start yelling a little bit, he could be a little bit more brass, and it would just be like a bad look, especially if our friend Steven just kind of keeps quiet and just lets him go off and blow off a lot of steam. I feel like it will be pretty like rhetoric heavy. I feel like Destiny will ask a bunch of questions that Hans will have to answer that he may like try and flip over, but I think at the end of the day Destiny will come on top, but I think it's going to be fun either way.
Chudlogic.
Okay, so I think that, Destiny has got a lot of advantages going into this. He's arguing essentially the status quo position, which always puts you in an advantage because a lot of the audience are going to go along with that. And also Destiny has got more experience. In terms of rhetoric, he's normally very solid. I think this is going to come down to what Haas we're going to see today. Are we going to see smart Haas coming with references, coming with philosophy, coming with Hegel, coming with whatever? Are we going to see, aggressive Haas, which could work to his benefit, attacking Destiny, pushing back on points, etc.? Are we going to see angry or tilted Haas? If we see angry or tilted Haas, that's going to be very bad for Haas for a number of reasons. I don't think that's going to play well with the judges. Also, further to that, it's going to be very embarrassing if we have another incident, like, for example, with Irrelevant, where he got extremely tilted. That's going to be memed. DGG's full of memers. His community, Destiny's community, is stronger than Haas's in that respect. So I think alongside the belt, there's other considerations. he's going to have to put his all into it to come out on top. But I think Haas has got a good chance, a good shot.
I will say, the one time that Haas was on the program, CTV barged in, as he does, the self-declared People's Champion. Not formally, the People's Championship is not formally recognized by the Hippy Dippy Commission, but he is the self-declared People's Champion. He barged in, and he went after Haas, calling him a communist, all these things. He just went after him hard, and Haas kept his cool. A man who is known for his Mongol outburst and his other outbursts and going really hard, kept his cool in a room with someone like CTV. And CTV makes mostly everyone who step into the ring on Hippy Dippy lose their cool, including chat on multiple occasions. So there is a good chance that if he plays his cards right, he might be able to lean away from what he's traditionally used to, or everybody's expecting him to do. I mean, if Destiny went into this overconfident, thinking that's the type of person he's going to be facing today, what if that's not the type of person he is?
Yeah, Destiny could. It's possible Destiny could let his guard down. Like Chudlogic said, if we see a Hans coming in with a lot of theory and a lot of ideas about the best way to move forward, and criticizing the Democrats and how they're doing and the future of the country when it comes to radicalization, extremism, and violence moving into the future, I really think that we can have a really nuanced discussion, and he could win a lot of people over with the idea of the inadequacy of the Democratic Party.
So let's say that Haas wins or Destiny wins. Here's a question. Let's say it's a Destiny. Let's say it's an upset and Haas wins, since the audience has voted and they do believe that it's either going to be a Destiny victory or possibly a problem with the judges. If he wins, who would you like to see him face, and what do you think the odds are? Who do you think he's gonna face, and who would you like to see him face if he ends up on top?
I think it would be fun to see him talk to Hunter Avalone. I would really like to see what that discussion would look like between the two, with a more like Marxist Leninist type of person, and someone who's moved like from the right to more of like a sock dem position. So he's moved closer to Hans, but there's still like a massive chasm between the two. I really like to see, and I think it really would come down to the topic at hand that they'd be discussing.
Chudlogic?
So yeah, I think that for me personally, I think that it would be interesting to see Haas actually debate another ML with a different tendency. Haas has come out strong with the position of this patriotic socialism, which is much of the discourse among many of the MLs on Twitter. So it'd be interesting to see like a Maoist or someone with a different perspective on patriotic socialism, perhaps someone that's very anti-America, and seeing how that kind of debate would pan out.
Okay. And let's say Destiny retains the belt. He defends and he comes out victorious. Who would you like to see him face next?
I'll go. I mean, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to go classic on this one. I'd like to see Vosh Destiny. I think, that's got to be the way, right?
Look, I can tell you from personal experience, from somebody who's trying to manage this, Vosh he was champion. He was undefeated technically at the end of his reign, even though he did vacate the belt due to a lack of defenses. What motivation does he have to come to the table to debate Destiny? He has talked openly on his stream how he doesn't want to debate Destiny. I've talked to him about this type of stuff in private, and he has continued that. That is both his public and private position. And what could possibly bring Vosh to the table to do this if he doesn't want to engage with the man?
Pride of having the belt, of defeating someone that you've outpaced intellectually at the end of the day. And I'm sorry, at the end of content, okay? We all know that we love that content. We're all creators here. We love the fight. We love the fire. You see another Destiny versus Vosh thumbnail and you're clicking, okay? So he could not like it, but at the end of the day, I don't know, he could stop once he's done and go play some more fucking shit and talk about 40K for another 30 minutes.
Let's talk about the wild horse on this for a second. Demon Mama. Demon Mama, obviously, is somebody who's just made the return to Twitch. Demon Mama is somebody that many people think is the rightful champion of the belt, even though we at Hippy Dippy Championship Incorporated do not recognize it. We have reviewed the footage, we have reviewed this, and we have found that she is not the champion currently, even though she believes that she was screwed there. Where does she play into all of this? I mean, doesn't she have some claim to the belt, and should she be challenging anybody at this stage? or should she be waiting the long game and coming forward later to say, "Hey, I deserve a shot at this belt"?
I'd love to see Demon Mama coming up as soon as possible to reclaim the throne. You know, she was right there. She was on the cusp. And then, you know, some fuckery happened, some ballots got lost, you know, maybe some voting machines ate them. Who knows, right? There are some problems, and then
Dominion judges. They were Dominion voting. There's another faction, Dominion judges, which we used.
Yeah, the Dominion shadow judges really screwed her over on that one. Yeah, I would really love to see her come back. She brings a lot to the table. Her debating style is interesting at the very least. When we in these panel settings, and she got really far. I think she can do it again, and I think she can pull it out at the very least rhetorically, win over some judges' hearts, and come out on top. I think she can.
And Chudlogic, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you know, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. There's certain contestants, and there's a lot of water under the bridge that's passed. Some of it's been very toxic water, without going too much into it. So, yeah, I think that is probably a big ask at this point. I think that, you know, sometimes some people, it's maybe better to stay away from some of the stuff that happens in these spaces. But, you know, yeah, obviously, you know, I'm friends with Demon Mama. I'm sure a lot of people that are watching know that watch me. So, yeah, obviously, I love to see Demon Mama come out fighting and, you know, battling with people when it's appropriate. So yeah, I'd love to see that.
Okay, is there any last second predictions you want to make? Anything you want to put down on how you think tonight is going to go? Any specific, anything, last things you want to say?
Go ahead.
I hope we don't get too deep into theory. It can be an interesting discussion. I don't think Destiny's going to play with that very well, and I think we can get bogged down and we can get derailed very quickly. I hope that doesn't happen. It could, but we're just going to have to see. I hope not. I hope it stays on the surface. I think there's lots of things to talk about there.
Okay, wonderful. And Chudlogic?
So yeah, I think that the right combination to the table of the knowledge and the theory, a little sprinkling of that, but the kind of aggression that people in Destiny's community will like to see. If he can fuse those two together, I think he can bring good content to the table. People are going to warm to him. He's just got to be really careful to not get tilted. Otherwise, he's going to lose a lot of people, and it could be very embarrassing for him.
Okay. It seems like we have a few more minutes. We're waiting for Destiny and Infrared to join the voice call. We're just waiting post-production. So, quick question. Shark, you have challenged for the belt before. You are somebody who I know has interest in the belt, wants to make strides towards this belt. What do you have to say about the landscape of the Hippy Dippy Championship? And if you want to challenge anybody to climb the ladder, or if you have any interest in the possible outcome of this when it comes to your striving towards the Hippy Dippy Championship, the most sought after championship in all of Twitch politics.
Yeah, it is the most prestigious, most sought after. Me personally, I've never been the most competitive person. I like to have fun, and the winning, it all comes secondary to that. So, but for me, whoever wins, I think at the end of the day, it won't be too difficult. I think with my debate style, I could hold my own if I do the research, if I look into the things, and if I feel like I'm correct, I feel like I can do well. Now, whether I play well to the judges, I'm not sure. I'm not on here that much, but when it comes to climbing the ladder, I'd love to do it again at some point in time.
Wonderful. And Chudlogic, I don't know about your position on this. Do you have any goals to strive for Hippy Dippy Championship gold, or the rumored Hippy Dippy Championship tag team belts that is rumored to be in production?
Listen, I'll be honest with you, okay? I'm on the Shrigma male grind set, okay? I'm sure a lot of people can respect that, yeah? I'm out here doing my own thing. If an opportunity presents itself, I'll of course go for it, okay? But I like to watch from the sidelines. I like to comment. But certainly, if there's an opportunity to get my hands dirty and it's right for me, I'll be straight in there.
You're more like a championship belt vulture.
Yes, something like that, yeah. Hopefully sweeping at some point, exactly.
Like I was a vulture when it comes to Chud Nights, right? And then I absorbed it into Hippy Dippy, right?
Yeah, that classic meme.
The comparisons to Vince McMahon are completely unfounded. Quick question to you guys. Hippy Dippy Championship has come a long way since it was the first time. The first time I did Hippy Dippy Championship, I didn't even have a place to live due to instability in my life, but we kept it going. What do you think of how far Hippy Dippy Championship has come since it was first brought forward?
I think it's come a long way. It's been it's been pretty fun. We've had our ups, we've had our downs. There's been a lot of back and forth. I've been seeing a lot of people say that the production value is really great. They really enjoy it. So we've come a long way from hotel and bed hopping to where we are now, and everything seems pretty great. I would like the future. I like where the future is heading with this, and I think we can get a lot more names in, and I think people can enjoy it. But I do think there's going to be a rotating cast, with these sort of panels, and there's some things happen, and that water under the bridge is very toxic, and some people just don't want to come back.
Okay, and Chudlogic?
I think it's a fantastic show. It's come along leaps and bounds from the early days to kind of what it is now. I think it's great that your viewership's increased. I think it's a well put together show. I must also just say, Dylan, obviously I know you put a lot of work into this, which is fantastic. But also we must thank the behind the scenes people that make this all possible, including the one and only Danabo.
Look, I mean, the people who went into going producing this one, because this one has the highest production value, as people are about to see. Which has been a secret up to this point, which is going to be on your screens. Shark Zero's seen it. A few other people have seen what we've done. Shark Zero didn't see the other one. We just finished 1 hour before production. But we are going to be increasing production value. This is put together by Mr. Geek, my editor. He helped with the graphics, like you're seeing on screen right now. It was put together by Danabo, Ramble Talker. We had Billy the Fridge, the internet rapping icon. He is going to be announcing, and we're going to be seeing that shortly. Of course, Shark Zero and Chudlogic offered up their time to be announcers on the program. And of course, I have put in a lot of effort to it. Not to mention the behind-the-scenes conversations and other people who we have worked to make this show not only the main event, but the undercard and the musics we've licensed and everything else. So I just want to thank everybody who's worked to make this possible, because this show, Hippy Dippy, was one of the main shows that helped me find a new place to live. And where I'm living in right now would not be possible without the people in my community who supported me through that time and continue to watch Hippy Dippy programming, the round table, the dating show, the championships, and as it continues to expand, because it has probably been my most expensive project, but 100% my most rewarding project. And tonight is going to be the closest we have seen to the fruition of what I want to see with the future of the Hippy Dippy Championship. So I want to thank everybody in the community and everybody who got together to make this possible. And I deeply appreciate it. Any last words, guys?
Get out there, have fun, debate your heart out, all right? And, make some good content, okay? We love you guys.
Okay. Now, it is time for the main event. The Hippy Dippy Championship. Destiny versus Haas. For the main event on Should People Vote for Democrats. You two may exit.
All right. Have fun. What? Okay. Good memes. Okay, give me 1 second and we're going to be going back to the normal.
And in the red corner, strongest competitor to ever challenge for the title, representing Mongols, and also with a reach of approximately 4 inches, weighing in at 300 pounds, the Alpha and the Omega, leader of the gorillas, the riser of the sun, and the star of the infrared show, Haas.
Monkey? Yeah, he commissioned both of them intros.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and of all ages, welcome to Dylan Burns TV's Hippy Dippy Championship. I'm your announcer, Billy the Fridge, and folks, do we have a show for you. Tonight on the Hippy Dippy and debating whether or not we should vote for Democrats, in the blue corner, representing DGG, and with a reach of approximately 4 inches and weighing in at 169 pounds, the destroyer of JonTron, 3 times banned from Twitch and 5 times banned from Twitter.com, current Hippy Dippy champion, undisputed by anyone, including the Demon Mama. It may be a woman's name, and there's nothing wrong with that. Destiny.
I did see this one. What are these memes? These are classic DGG memes. Yeah, it's supposed to give you WWE vibes. Yeah, they put a lot of work into it. Yeah, intellectually outpaced. That's a good meme. Holy fuck, what the hell is happening?
Okay,
what the fuck is that flag behind him?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Loud and clear.
He has pet fish?
Happy to have you both here today. I would like to thank you both for deciding to join today's programming for the Hippy Dippy Championship. Whoever wins today will be the Hippy Dippy Championship. That award, of course, comes with a over $300 professional belt that we have designed personally for the person to be awarded, as well as many guaranteed future appearances on the Hippy Dippy programming and championship defenses. I would like to thank you both.
You become non-white by subbing. It's the same as
Destiny, would you like to introduce yourself?
on Twitch. It's just a $5 sub.
I am Destiny, the reigning Hippy Dippy Belt champion. I slaughtered my last opponent with alacrity so hard that I believe that they and their crew left crying. And I'm here to do the same once more, to defend the belt against these horrible tanky scourge while defending my boys, the Democratic Party in the United States of America. That's what I'm here to do today.
Stephen Kenneth Destiny Vanilla.
And now we're
II.
going to throw it over to Infrared. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Oz from Infrared. I am here. I don't know what a Hippy Dippy is. I don't know what a belt is. I don't know anything about that. I am here to prove Marxism, Leninism in the age of multipolarity in the post-COVID world. I am here to debunk the lies about the so-called Democratic Party. There's nothing democratic about it.
Damn.
I'm here to debunk the idea that the establishment is the only bet and the only choice we have. I'm here to defend the idea of a big tent third party.
Yes, Destiny is one of his
names.
names.
Let me tell you
That's his real
something.
name.
I don't intend on losing.
He got it from his aunt. It's a woman's name.
Happy to have you both here. And I would like to thank the production staff for the amazing Titantrons and Billy the Fridge, the internet legend, for the amazing intros for both of them. Now, I am going to state the rules quickly. So, you will both have a short intro period where you can give your basic thoughts on the topic, and an outro period, which will be uninterrupted. Then, you will have an open period where you two can go back and forth. I will not be giving my opinions in this debate. If I speak up, I am only moderating, and that is the only time when you're going to really need to quiet down. Now, the purpose of this, of course, is for you two to debate the topic. Should Americans vote for the Democratic Party? And if there's any more questions about rules or regulations, the only last thing I can say is that afterwards, of course, a 3-judge panel will decide who gets the championship belt mailed to them after this debate. So, everybody ready?
Wait, what is that? Do you see that? It says like Dream and there's like a diamond pickaxe.
Wonderful.
Does he watch
So,
Dream?
Since Infrared is the challenger for the belt,
time?
I will give him first word on should people vote for the Democratic Party.
So to begin, hold on, wait, someone's at the door. You need to...
Okay, Destiny. I can't mess with it's mind games.
What the fuck?
Hi, how's it going?
Wait, is that Dinkle?
We're going
Holy
great.
fuck, are they dating?
How you guys doing?
Doing good.
We're doing great.
What's the question?
Should people vote for Democrats?
This guy.
Definitely not. Definitely not.
Thank you, Dinkle.
Okay, if that's the intro, Destiny, now you can start with yours.
That's the intro. I'll do my intro. We should not vote for Democrats because at the end of the day, Democrats are only another arm of the
fuck's happening, man?
They're furthering the imperialist wars. They are crippling more Americans.
We can't
into
hear anything you're saying. Your mic is like really like
You gotta back up from the mic a little
fucking
bit.
up.
Is it too loud?
Yeah, it's like the gain is like immense.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
The Democratic Party is furthering the crippling of the American
Why is
public.
he looking
They're
over
further
there?
indebting them.
Is Hans
They're driving
carrying
them
those
into
like
more-
big cars that they
driving
use for
us
like
into more
nighttime
imperialist
shows?
wars.
So he has like
They
the script.
are causing us to not have health care, not have free public tuition. They're preventing all of the basic necessities we need to have a prosperous society. Yet they're all running under the guise of supporting these things, and they're sheepdogging more people into the Democratic Party in an effort to co-opt the movement. And at the end of the day, they only further isolate people from actually achieving any of these goals. So, I think if you look at the actual policies that have been failed to have been passed but have been supported by different candidates, you can see that they've lied time and time again about the things that they say they support. And even then, some of the things that they do say they support from the get-go.
I'm sorry, like these two together is just incredible. It's like Mario and Dr. Mario. It's like
options that will only further decimate the healthcare industry.
It's like Pitt and Dark Pitt. You know what I mean?
This country to guarantee universal healthcare to all people.
I love how he's his
It's only
Echo
gonna hurt
fighter.
more Americans, and that's what they do.
Okay, Destiny, your intro statement.
Voting for third parties is a waste of time. None of them have a shot at making it anywhere. The only thing that's good for third parties is getting
man?
Twitter clout or having fun debates, I guess, on Twitch or
Beavis and Butthead.
YouTube. If you truly want to support things like a more robust economy that supports workers at the bottom, healthcare that works for everybody and not just people
Yeah,
who
we
can
want to
afford
support bottoms.
best private insurance. Relatively less hawkish foreign policy, people that support things around medical science. So, for instance, stuff related to vaccines or the coronavirus. If you want to support people's right to vote, if you want to support the ability for unions to exist, and if you want to support a party that believes in climate change, I think that it's probably more important to support the Democratic Party than to throw away your vote on some meme third party that doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of holding any effective office. I think that if third parties really wanted to build real power in this country, they would spend more time actually winning local elections to build real support for their movement instead of just doing this like Hail Mary for the presidency every year where they can raise some money, have absolutely no effective change, and then write a bunch of books later on about the failures of their parties and all the excuses they make for it. And yeah, that's what we're here to talk about today, I guess.
Okay, it is now open dialogue. You two are free to go back and forth. You may begin.
So I think Destiny begins from the presupposition that the Democrats were the only ones who support this,
This
and
guy's
that,
fucking Mike, man.
and that no one else actually has a chance. I'm curious to know why Destiny thinks
That's a
he
$400
knows
microphone.
a third party is actually not possible. Given the history of the United States, the Republicans and Democrats haven't always existed, and there's actually a precedent in monumental historical shifts, political shifts within the United States. And historical shifts within the United States. Third parties and alternative parties to the status quo do happen in the history of the United States. Shifts in the even the political alignment of parties happen in these kinds of
leftist audio,
decisive historical moments. And I think you would really have to be a complete, either a liar or someone who's burying their head under the sand to deny the fact that right now in this country we are facing a decisive historical transformation, a political realignment, and one such moment that precisely makes an alternative third party possible. Now, you can, deny and dismiss that all you want, but to go out of your way to say that a third party actually isn't possible and that the only choice we have is between the Republicans and the Democrats, I think that's an unfounded assumption.
So typically, if political parties are going to build their power, it's not going to be a Hail Mary winning of the presidential election. And then all of a sudden, this third political party is more popular. If there was a third party that was legitimately gaining steam, then I mean, maybe there might be talk of supporting them in the future. But I was here when people thought libertarians could win against Obama, when people supported Ron Paul, back with Bush and the Green Party, people were talking. There was Ross Perot. I mean, against Trump, you've seen like third party, Gary Johnson. Like there have been all these third party candidates that have kind of sprung up, and they can get like 1% of the vote or 2% of the vote.
Oh yeah, and if you want to know why his microphone is so bad, he turned up the gain like incredibly high, so he can talk across the room and you can hear him. The only problem is when he gets close, it peaks and clips.
I think that if third parties want to build real power, they should probably focus doing it on the city or at least state level before they just try to make these big runs for the presidency, when most people in the United States consider those third parties to be a joke.
Okay, well, there's two things actually. The first argument I'd like to point out is that historically speaking, the emergence of the Republican Party was precise. The Republican Party didn't emerge because they were slowly winning at the local level, and then eventually, no, it created because there was a discernible political distinction and difference that was within the prevailing party. And it was precisely, by winning the presidency that the Republican Party was boosted into relevance and significance historically. So historically speaking, that's just not true. Third parties, or whatever you want to call them, alternative parties, have won historically on the basis of these kinds of so-called Hail Marys. But even if we discount that fact, I'm just commentating. Think people should necessarily rely on a so-called Hail Mary. I think that a party does require work at local levels. It does require dedication and energy and building foundations and infrastructure, and it requires the maturity to be able to have a big tent third party. This is the most important part, that's going to be able to overcome, the kind of petty political sectarianism that you see so common among the left, and just be able to focus on getting this third party to win. But on the other hand, if the question is about, and we're addressing this to the audience, should you vote Democrat? My view is a decisive no. And the reason why is because you should be focusing your effort on building a third party. And even if that means taking your energy and attention away from these, congressional and presidential elections, if a third party is going to start winning locally, that also implies a broader information and propaganda war that allows you to draw a line of distinction. You can't, on the one hand, campaign at a local level and say, oh, let's vote for this third party, but on the other hand, shill for the Democrats when it comes to the national level in terms of propaganda and optics. So just to be able to distinguish yourself enough sufficiently, even if you're just going to focus on local levels, you do have to make a stance when it comes to these very broad, unifying political moments where, American politics is really defined at the level of the presidential elections, whether we like that or not, just at the level of optics, information, and propaganda. So if you're going to distinguish yourself as a third party, you cannot say, oh, let's vote for Biden, or oh, let's swallow our pride and vote for the Democrats. You have to take a stance, even just as a matter of optics, in those such moments. So to whoever it may concern, right? And I don't think this is going to be like the majority of the American people right now, but those who are interested in politics, young people who do want to see changes in this country, you should focus, and this is true for influencers such as yourself, who go on stream and claim that, you're interested in seeing all these changes happen in this country. It doesn't matter where you fall on the political spectrum. It doesn't matter what your specific ideology is or what your specific views are. You should be getting on board with a big tent, focusing on trying to build a big tent, a third party. And I find it especially ironic that Destiny says it's not possible when, if streamers like him, influencers like him, got the ball rolling, him, Vaush, Hassan, and all these streamers, I mean, that enough would like blow out of the water all of the other precedent attempts within the past, few decades to build third parties. You already have the media infrastructure to build a political alternative in this country. Like you are yourself a form of alternative media, Destiny, whether you like it or not. You're not a form of mainstream media. So I just find it.
Wait, do I get a chance to respond to things, or holy shit?
Go ahead. Well, yeah, you can barge up.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm trying not to just talk over. So I mean, like, if we want to talk about like political parties from 200 years ago, we can. I mean, if you've got a political party that's ready to absolutely collapse in the United States that doesn't enjoy like a massive amount of popularity, which the Democratic and the Republican Party do, I mean, we can do that. But I mean, it took the Whig Party collapsing, right, in like the fucking 1800s in order for the Republican Party to like grow from the ashes of that. To try to say that like the situation is the same today, I know that a lot of people talk like, oh my God, like the parties are collapsing. They're not. They both enjoy like a pretty tremendous amount of support right now. I just don't see either of them collapsing right now. Now, maybe that'll change in a few years. Maybe the party of Trump, maybe we'll come out and support Trump as a third party candidate. Who knows? I mean, that's anything is possible. I guess it could be. The progressive or left-wing movement in the Democratic Party definitely isn't healthy or large enough to support somebody. But maybe in the Republican Party, maybe we'll see somebody grow out as a result of that. But again, like these political realignments happened like over 150 years ago, right? The Democratic and Republican Party are like 200 years old. I think that any time you're trying to say this is possible and you have to reach back like as a millennia, 100 years, like 200 years to try to point to where this has happened before, I think your argument is already starting off on an incredibly rocky foot. Like politics change, the power of the federal government changes, the way that we consume media changes, the way that these parties exist. 2 centuries. The way that these parties exist has changed. Like these exist just so much that I'm not willing to go back 200 years ago and say, well, it worked then, so it should work now. In terms of like, if you vote on a third party, does that mean that like you should vote third party, even if that means losing elections in the meantime? I don't like that idea because I think that is a very privileged position to have. There are a lot of people that are hurting right now in the United States that probably don't want to gamble the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years of their life on whatever gambit you have for your fantasy third party that's going to come up and rise up and destroy the United States, or not destroy the United States, but destroy the U.S. like political parties that exist right now. I think that's a pretty selfish thing to demand of people that are hurting right now and need help right now. So, and then also in terms of like, you can't vote third party locally and then presidentially vote different. You absolutely can do that. Local politics are an incredibly diverse landscape of different types of candidates that believe in all sorts of different things. There's even more variety among Republicans and Democrats at the local level, or you can support third parties. And you might even have a better shot doing so. There are plenty of local scenes that support, for instance, open primaries where anybody can make it to like these top 2 or 3 positions. And then you have your citywide or your statewide vote. Like these things exist. There might even be more ripe areas where third party candidates can flourish because the amount of money that you need to raise is way less, and campaigning on key issues to those geographic areas is more successful than trying to make this huge run at the presidential scene. And then even the idea that like you can't vote differently one way and then vote another way for president doesn't make sense, because we saw like on down ballot tickets that there were, for instance, a lot of Republicans that would support Trump but then wouldn't support down ballot Republicans, or there were a lot of Democrats that would support Biden but wouldn't support down ballot Democratic, senators or congressmen. So I think you absolutely can support third-party candidates on local levels while also supporting, a mainstream president or a mainstay like one of the 2 political party presidents, so that you can increase the.
I mean, Haas can go on the route of like you can focus like getting first past the post or something through.
Stance as a matter of optics. Once more, I think it's a privileged position to be able to wear a political flag optically or rhetorically rather than out of necessity, like a lot of poor people are right now, for instance, that are helped by the child tax credit that exists under Biden that probably wouldn't have come under the Republicans, or, for diabetics that have health insurance that wouldn't have, but they do thanks to the ACA, or, for people who can feel a little bit more secure about their future because they were DACA recipients that aren't constantly being attacked by Trump anymore. These are people that don't have the luxury of wearing a political outfit as like a rhetorical or optical device, but rather they rely on these political parties to secure a safe existence in the United States.
Okay. So I discerned 5 points, and I'm just going to respond to each of them, and I'll count them off the top of my hand, right? So the first one was about the, unless you think the Democratic Party is today about to collapse. I'm actually curious as to your view on what a situation would look like. What would it look like for a party to collapse? Because the way I see it, for example, we're looking at an infrastructure bill that's not embarrassingly can't even be passed, not because of the Republicans, but because of a faction of the Democrats, right? I mean, that's just one example too. The political realignment is so profound today within the 2 constituent parties. I don't see how you could say, oh yeah, the Democratic Party enjoys widespread popularity. Well, which Democratic Party? Because if you look at the factions within the Democratic Party, it is not a unified party. So I'm curious as to which party you're referring to, because unless you can prove that there's like a, like unifying support
is he
for
saying
the
that there's, like,
Democrats
parties
in
within
general,
the party?
like regardless of the differences within them, which is a completely base. Like Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin's base is not voting for the Democrats for the same reason that Democrats elsewhere are voting for the. There are really specific class demographic.
That's also wrong. Kristen Sinema's base actually doesn't like what she's doing right now.
I'm curious, what would it look like for a party to collapse? The second thing you said was that there hasn't been a political realignment like the one that happened around the Civil War in 200 years. First of all, that's just not true, right? The Democrats and Republicans only share continuity with those parties historically in all but name today, right? We all know that. The parties have fundamentally changed. And if you look at the origins of the modern Democratic Party, it's actually really interesting. It was because of initiatives like the Populist Party and the Farmers Alliance in the late 19th century and early 20th century that led to this kind of unity between, that led to the synthesis that is the New Deal Democrats, which eventually would be, champion the causes of minorities and stuff. And so you can actually locate two realignments within the 20th century. The first one was the rise of the Democrats as like the party of the New Deal. The second one was around the time of JFK and beyond, where the Democrats increasingly coveted the votes of minorities and
that's a decent point.
Demographics like that instead of the traditional working class white base. The third thing you said, and if I've forgotten some of your points, you're going to have to correct me or point out like you didn't respond to this. The third thing I think you mentioned was that, you have this dream about a third party, but that's coming from a position of privilege, because what about harm reduction? And the thing I find so interesting about arguments about harm reduction is this assumption about the scale of time. Now, if you're talking about voting individually for the Democrats in order to reduce, even if there's still going to be harm, it'll be that much different for that. It'll make a difference to real concrete individuals. Well, you're still speaking in terms of like an abstract scale of millions of people. So if you can speak in terms of millions of people at that scale of harm reduction or whatever, why can't you speak in terms of time? What if in the short term people may suffer more, but in the long term you're securing a better future? What if you don't act now and fight for a third party alternative to the current establishment, future generations are going to be more profoundly harmed than the amount of people who are going to be harmed now. So I'm interested if you can address this issue of the scale of time. The fourth thing I think
would it be possible for us to go point by point so we could just have a back and forth?
I'll combine the last two. So you basically said you can still vote local and vote for Democrats at the national level. Well, that's true. You obviously can do that, and I'm not saying, you're morally hypocritical or inconsistent for it, but I'm saying in terms of what would be necessary for building a third party, yes, in terms of the sphere of the information war and optics, you can't be shilling for the Democrats at the national level and then voting for the, then saying, let's vote for the third. You're telling people you're not willing to risk enough for this party. You basically don't believe in it. You believe the current options are the only ones that really exist, and you're saying, that's privilege to focus on optics, because you're not focusing on poor people and doing charity. Well, guess what? Those poor people you're talking about are literally the people who don't fucking vote. So I don't know why you if it's about them and you're using them as your excuse and them as your shield. Why don't they vote? They don't vote. Overwhelmingly, the people who don't vote are not privileged people. It's the privileged people in this country who go out and vote the most and spread the word that people should vote. Non-privileged people don't give a shit about politics. They don't believe in the system and the establishment. They think the two parties are the same thing. In fact, a third party would probably mobilize more currently politically apathetic voters than any other political option on the table. So this is an absurd argument you're leveling. It's privilege. And then the idea that politics isn't about information and optics.
It's so much
politics,
talking.
I'll just say this. In this country, politics is only information plus organization. That's all it is. There's nothing more to politics in this country but optics / information and organization. It's not about charity. It's not about harm reduction. It's not about doing things now so less people suffer. Why don't you sign up personally, Destiny? You should sign up for a soup kitchen Instead of sitting on your ass streaming, if you're going to talk about, oh, what can I do individually to help the most people? Individually, why don't you give your money to charity? Why don't you work for a soup kitchen? You know, if you want to go down that route and act like that's what politics is about, you know, it's a complete absurdity.
Okay, for going forward, we're going to go point by point, so we don't have like 5 or 10 minute statements. Okay, that's
okay.
That is.
I feel like if we do that, I feel like I've lost because now I can't respond to everything that was said though.
Okay, so we will have you give a 3 to 3.5 minute statement. Then we're going point by point past that. I don't want to have just essays back and forth.
Well, but is that for Nahaz? Because wouldn't he get basically gish gallop then? He wouldn't be able to respond?
Well, see, this is you got to draw the line somewhere, and that's where I'm drawing.
Sure,
the line.
he spoke like 5 minutes first. Okay, so at the very least, I'll do my response and then okay. So in terms of what would the situation look like for the parties to collapse, I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I imagine it probably wouldn't look like a record number of votes for both presidential candidates in the history of the United States of America.
He's gish galloping?
It would
I'm sorry
probably
with the
look
gish galloping, yeah.
like less and less people voting, or maybe the rise of third parties in other areas, or I don't know, maybe like an inability to fundraise, or I mean, there are like signs or things where it's like maybe some huge piece of legislation that caused a fracture from a party. Like some people could argue that January 6th was the collapse of the Republican Party because some people left the Republican Party after that. Probably not enough for it to happen, but I mean, there are signs that we could look for a collapse, but whatever those signs are, we absolutely don't see them now. It's not YouTube people saying that like, oh my God, these parties suck. They're both the same. When we talk about how the infrastructure bill can't be passed because of Democrats, this is just like the dumbest thing that anybody could possibly ever say. We are split 50-50 right now. We are fighting for votes 49 and 50 on the Democratic side. We're not fighting for any of the 50 Republicans that are standing against this piece of legislation. It is not the Democrats that are preventing the bill from being passed. It is 50 Republicans plus 1 or 2 incredibly moderate or conservative Democrats that are in the way of this infrastructure bill being passed. To try to say that it's the same, to try to say that the Democrats are preventing it from being passed, just shows like a misunderstanding of how our legislative bodies work. There's not a single Republican willing to come on board with this. Okay, well then you need every single Democrat to come on board with it, which is really hard for what is arguably like the largest piece of legislation since the New Deal. It's a huge piece of legislation. In terms of, again, the party is not a unified party. Can you provide or show like how there's like unifying support? I mean, there were huge turnouts for the presidential election, but in terms of like unifying support, I mean, like a Democrat in one area is not going to be the same as a Democrat in another area. A Republican in one area is not going to be the same as a Republican in another area. But if anything, this is an argument in favor of the ability for
they are pretty conservative. Listen, this point seems a little bit more semantic. They are Democrats and they are stopping the bill from being passed. Yeah, obviously the Republicans don't want it to be passed either.
And again, like your argument, you're bringing up a lot of arguments that I think support my system, right? You're saying like the parties have fundamentally changed over time. Of course, the parties have a lot of tenacity, much like how Marx said that capitalism embeds itself into the government and also has abilities to perpetuate itself over long periods of time, preventing the rise of a socialist economy. Political parties also do as well. But this entrenchment of the political parties and their ability to kind of like morph and change and be a little bit flexible as people's opinions change, that's just arguments in favor of them continuing to stand the test of time, as they've had both for like almost like over 150 years for both of them. When we talk about like engaging in harm reduction, it is literally about choosing the lesser of multiple evils. It's not pontificating about an ideal third party nirvana that might exist 20 years from now that there's absolutely no roadmap for right now in any of the upcoming like federal level elections. I don't know how anybody could say that that's harm reduction. When we talk about like in the short term, you know, people might suffer, but in the long term, maybe we're securing a better future. That's just like, I don't know. In the long term, it could be a fascist dictatorship that rises up after a civil war. You know, I don't know if I would trust the Democrats or left-leaning people in this country to win a civil war against Republicans. No offense. So yeah, this idea that we need to throw away like our current electoral advantage in order to like do this huge gamut for this future that we have zero proof even exists, that we don't even know if there's that much support for these left-leaning parties in the United States. It seems like people like Bernie Sanders would prove that the support that they believe is there just isn't. When you say that you can't shill for Dems at a national level and then vote for a local third party, again, you absolutely can. Your local politics, your local political scene is going to be way different than your national level political scene. I don't know where these statements are born out of, other than just an unfamiliarity with local political scenes. Like you can have local political people that are Democrats or Republicans that are wildly different in terms of what they support based on the national level. So you can totally support different candidates on a local level and different candidates at a federal level. This is exactly why we talk about down ballot voting and why sometimes it's important and sometimes
actually, Lonnie, I know what you're talking about, but that actually wasn't true. Remember during like what was it, 2018? When Trump tried to repeal Obamacare, but then there was like a couple who didn't want to do it and it didn't get passed.
And then in terms of like, it maybe a third party will galvanize these people and get out to vote. Third parties exist right now. Bernie Sanders tried this. Like, we're going to get all these people who traditionally don't vote to go and vote. People say this all the time. We're going to get these people. We're going to mobilize. We're going to get these people to go and vote. It never happens. If there is some third party that can magically mobilize or galvanize these non-voters into like new voters, that'd be great. It would be like a historic thing in order to do that. People have tried. People have failed. And in terms of like, I don't think politics is about running soup kitchens either. If you want to talk about like personal charity or volunteer work, we can talk about that. But that's a fundamentally different question than whether or not we should support third parties.
Okay, now from now on, it's going to be point by point. I just don't want 5-minute statements going back and forth. So that's how it's going to be going from this point on.
Okay, very quickly, I'll run down the list. So the reason for the incredible turnout in the recent election was not because anyone believes in the unity of the Democrats and the Republicans. It was a referendum on Trump, and that's all it was. Trump defined American politics at that point. People voted for Biden not because they believed in a unifying Democratic consensus or they believe in a unified Democratic Party, because it was a referendum on Trump. That's the only reason you're going to see such high turnout, because Trump has divided this country down the middle. And that's the only thing that unites Democrats at this point, is that they're against Trump.
Well, but then why not? Why couldn't it be a referendum on Trump by going out to vote for a third party?
What do you mean? We don't have a third party doesn't exist right now. There's the infrastructure for one. No one's building one right now. No one's.
Yeah, that's my whole argument.
People are committing to the work of building a third party. You yourself, streamers and influencers who represent alternative media.
Also, I mean, there is some infighting, but it's more like national and state Republican parties that are infighting. Remember, Arizona has 2 Democratic senators. Georgia has 2 Democratic senators right now.
You want to ask me why do we have a third party right now? Well, it's people like me and it's other people who are using their media platforms to try and work for one and get something off the ground. And I just started recently. I don't know how my luck is going to fare, but you already have a really big, sizable platform and a big audience. You could do wonders for a third party yourself, Destiny.
I don't support third parties, so that's why I don't. I use my influence and I try to do things for the Democratic Party.
So, hold on, when you say point by point, do you mean like I can't go down the list and address everything, or?
Oh yeah, we're going point by point. We're going point by point. Yes. So you can like move from one point to the next point after you've addressed it. Yeah.
I don't understand how like we think that like the way that third parties are going to rise in the Americas off the backs of YouTubers and Twitch streamers. That seems like a pretty like sad scene for third parties in the United States.
You can call it YouTubers or Twitch streamers, and I'll call it alternative media. But YouTube sounds like a silly website, and it's a silly website on the internet with Minecraft or whatever, PewDiePie. But the truth is that YouTube, and this is, you can read the mainstream media because they themselves will confess this, has been an incredible platform for alternative media. Even alternative media you probably aren't so vehemently opposed to, like the Young Turks, for example. You were probably
and a lot of alternative media holds a lot of power. I mean, Destiny even said that he wanted people like Vosh and Hassan to go out and do a lot of work as well.
Absolutely not, but okay.
And Destiny himself went to
alternative
Georgia.
media exists. I agree that alternative
progressive movement in the United States after the Obama era, its media was media like the Young Turks and Democracy Now! And these kind of alternative media platforms that were largely on YouTube. So this idea that YouTube isn't a serious platform for alternative media, well, it's just that this alternative media has first emerged on YouTube. Will it always be on YouTube? Probably not, but
sure. Like
the TYT is not the TYT is its own company, and it has its own website, and it airs on radio in some stations, if I remember correctly. But they're prominent on YouTube.
Young Turks and Kyle Kulinski, and I'm against AOC. I completely oppose AOC.
Sure, but where did they launch that initiative? Where did it go to?
They did it within the Democratic Party. Yeah,
exactly.
I know.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, by the way, is because the Democratic Party already had the fundamental infrastructure, and the Democratic Party was a recognizable party with a base. But we've seen actually how.
Yeah, but like Destiny, Vosh, and Hassan are also optical nightmares as well. If you think about it, I mean, come on.
The Justice Democrats as an initiative failed entirely because we don't have our own independent party with its own independent streams of revenue and its own independent structure that's not going to prevent progressives from being able to take over the party. And very early on when AOC was elected, the whole mainstream media and the party itself quickly did everything in its power to squash that in its cradle. And at this point, the AOC has been completely co-opted as just another Democrat. So that's not really a good argument for why we shouldn't be doing it for a third party. But regardless,
well, I think that's an amazing argument. So I mean, like the Justice Dems, like were probably from what I know of, is like the best initiative from an alternative media platform. The Young Turks and Kyle Kalinske, the Justice Dems were able to do it, but they had to do it going the route internal to the Democratic
failure. Let's reflect on the reasons for its failure.
Wait. No, you're saying failure, but I don't think it's a failure. They've got like 4 really strong members that are elected. AOC is arguably like the most popular politician in the United States right now.
This is about making people's lives better. What has AOC done for the American people that makes it such a successful initiative?
AOC doesn't have the ability to leverage much. So we have these huge misunderstandings of how our legislative. I'm just going to start talking.
AOC has.
So we have this inability to talk about politics in the United States because people like you seem to think that AOC needs to be able to solo change like the legislative course or trajectory of the Democratic Party. We have 50 Democrats in the Senate.
She could make maybe she can do like a little bit of help, but AOC has only done harm for the Democrats, actually. AOC,
I don't think that's true.
It's been an optics disaster for Democrats and a propaganda ammunition for the Republicans at this point. Even as a Democrat, you can't say AOC is an example of someone's success. It's not. AOC has been a disaster for them. Like maybe Trump could have won in 2020 because of politicians like AOC were so divisive in this country.
AOC was the face caused Donald Trump?
Like the wing of the Democrats that precisely has no chance whatsoever from reaching out to Trump's constituent base and these type of people that Biden himself is trying to.
There are Democrats right now who are for things like a $15 minimum wage or for Medicare for all, who are in like Republican plus, if I remember correctly, 2 to 5 districts, maybe even 6 as well. Is it just wrong?
Sure that we have Destiny to finish this point quick. Just then we'll have.
Yeah. So like this idea that like she's like people say this over and over and over again. If you want, I guess we can talk about like the structure of the U.S. government. But like, I'm sorry, but again, this shows like the short-sightedness of people that have these huge legislative initiatives and can only get like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 people into office. Like you have to build these caucuses. This shit takes time. This shit takes real work. You guys want this fantasy world where out of nowhere you're gonna have like 200 people march into Congress thinking that they're all going to be these third-party people to support what you want. That's not how this works. Right now, far left like lawmakers don't really have the leverage they need because right now you barely have a legislative majority in the Senate. If that's the case, you're always going to be appealing to people in the middle that can be lost next election season to the other side. Like AOC can make all the stinks she wants. Her seat's not being taken by a Republican. There's a reason why people like Sinema or why people like Manchin have the leverage in the poll that they do, and it's because they're the ones that exist close to the center. But if you had a margin of like 52 Dems or 54 Dems and you didn't have to worry as much about that center, then people on the really far left could start making more power plays, where AOC is like, I'm not going to support this piece of legislation until this happens or this happens. And it's like, okay, well, we've got some wiggle room. We got 53, 52 Democrats in here. Like maybe we can start to make appeals to that side of the political aisle. But it's not going to happen right now when you're barely holding Congress.
That being said, a lot of the progressives have been holding down a lot of positions, and they have gotten a lot of acquiesces out of the moderates and the conservatives.
All this legislation. All I'm saying is she at least should kickstart some kind of change within the Democratic Party. And she hasn't done anything like that, at least for the positive, as far as the ability for the Democrats to win over the people that are voting for Republicans currently now. The second thing is that you basically make this completely contradictory.
All of the presidential Democratic candidates wanted to sound like Bernie and AOC when they were running.
The current political reality is the only reality. On this one other hand, you say, oh, the reason why, and I wanted to actually get to this point, but apparently we can't. Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin have leverage. It's because there's not enough Democrats that have a majority over the Republicans. But that's implying that the reason for that isn't because of these objective political realities of populations in the United States who will never vote for the Democrats and will stick on the Republicans. It's this idea that the reason why it's such a slim majority right now is because there's not enough politically minded young people who are going out and voting for the Democrats. I completely reject that view. I think the reason why it's split down the middle is because this country is actually split down the middle. And for you to say, and I really want to address this point, for you to say that the Democrats, it's not the Democrats' fault because they can't pass the infrastructure bill is the most stupid thing I've ever heard. The Democrats are the ones, it's a given Republicans are going to oppose it. The Democrats have a majority now. as a party, they're supposed to act in a unified way if it's a unified party. And yet it's because of a faction of the Democrats that you're not getting this bill passed. You can't blame the Republicans because you already told people to vote for Democrats as an alternative to the Republicans. So they voted Democrat, so much to the point that the Democrats have a majority. But now you're saying, oh, that's not enough. The Democrats have to have an even more bigger majority. Well, how much wiggle room is there for Democrats to win when, how much ability is there for Democrats to win over these Trump supporting Republicans to the point where, you can keep making these excuses? I don't buy it. I don't think it's going to happen. You're not going to win over these Trump people as a Democrat. And that seems self-evident and obvious to me. You're just the country's divided down the.
Yeah, like I just think it's pretty crazy. The squad came in 2018. It's been 3 years, man. They haven't even been through 2 election cycles. Come on.
Like earlier, you were saying that like the Democrat Party isn't unified. It's got a ton of different.
And then in 2020, we got Cory Bush.
It's not unified.
Wait, so this is the point, right? If you have 50 Democrats in office, not every single Democrat is going to have the same legislative initiatives as every other Democrat. A Democratic senator from West Virginia is going to be far different than a Democratic senator from California. The way that they're going to vote
is one of those things that defines the unity of the Democrats as a party, especially in this political moment where it's a test of whether the Democrats can pass bills, right?
But Joe Manchin is not the Democratic Party.
Sinema is the same party if you don't agree to pass this infrastructure bill.
I guess we can like talk about like political strategy because that's what this comes down to. Like Manchin and Sinema are not going to give up their seats to vote for something that's going to lose them a future election. Like, I'm sorry, but that's just like the political reality. People seem to think like, oh, the Democrats are going to come together and vote. There's only one national level thing that we do in the United States, and that's the presidential election. Otherwise, you've got 50 senators, 2 from each state, and you've got 438 members of the House, and then 1 or 2 from DC that don't do anything. And these people are all trying to win in their individual little districts. Now we come together under large wings of who we consider Republicans and who we consider Democrats, but that doesn't mean that every single person under that wing is going to vote the exact same way. And when you keep saying, well, they've got a majority, bro, they have, wait, hold on, let me finish responding. You talk for like 20 minutes, okay? When you have a quote unquote majority that's literally a tiebreaker by the vice president, you're talking about the slimmest fucking margins in the world. Trump had the exact same problems when he had even bigger margins, when he couldn't repeal and replace the ACA. Like he ran into similar problems too, where he couldn't get part of his legislative agenda passed. He didn't get the wall done like he wanted to, We have a lot of problems with gridlock right now in the Senate. That's why things like the nuclear option become a problem. That's why we have people like trying to get rid of the filibuster. Like, I agree that gridlock is a problem, but you can't say like, well, look, we got you your 50 senators. Where's all of this key legislation coming from? Because that's not going to happen, because by definition, any political party that includes a ton of people at the very edges is going to have people that are more moderate that are going to have to be catered to when it comes to passing legislation with incredibly slim majorities.
So I don't know why you mentioned Trump having problems too, because it's also my view that the Republican Party is ultimately doomed as well. The Republican Party right now is Trump's party. If it's something beyond Trump's party, then the party is doomed to collapse.
The National
it's Trump's
Party is
right
Trump's
now.
party.
Any Republican who's not on board with Trump, I don't see having a future within the so-called
Would you bet on
Party.
any of this? Would you bet on a third party, like
That's
senator
it.
or president in the past, like in the next like 4 elections?
Here's my issue.
Okay.
You keep using this language like, would you bet on the prospects? Is it going to happen? At what point? I get that there are objective realities in politics. Like you, I'm not a utopian. I don't think that politics is just based on my personal moral views and my personal ideology. I get it. There are objective realities that reject the objective realities of people's sentiments and beliefs or whatever. But at what point does will actually make a difference in politics? At what point do you have to stand up and work for something and build something and fight for something that there doesn't exist any immediate precedent for? If the actual innovators in the history of American politics had your mentality, we would have no change in the history of American politics at all. There would be no Abe Lincoln. There would be no Franklin Roosevelt. There would be no John F. Kennedy, or maybe, if it depends on where you fall on the political spectrum, maybe no Richard Nixon. You have to take risks. You have to fight for some things for which there doesn't exist any immediate precedent for, because you can't keep deferring to what is the current reality. The current reality isn't just objective. It also includes subjective realities. And
the reason why
you have to step in and actually have will in politics.
So the reason why nobody would
Get
vote
some
on third parties is
balls,
because
bro.
you guys know that they're not a possibility. Like you won't even vote with odds, right? Like if I were to ask you, is there a 10% chance that your party will make it? Then I'll give you 10-1 odds on somebody like making it into the presidency or like a senator.
I want a third party to be built.
Yeah. So if you want to build a third party, okay, you keep saying that like if people thought like you, nothing would happen. Then start building. You can start with mutual aid program. You can start. I got it. I'm just gonna keep talking. Okay. You can start with like mutual aid programs. You can start with like.
Let's walk it back a little bit.
Okay, I'm gonna beat you both. Quick. Talking over each other, nobody hears anything. Okay? So what I'm gonna have is Destiny finish what he was saying about the betting, and then I'm gonna have it bring it to Infrared to respond, and I'll count personally how long.
I want to push back a little bit on Destiny's claim that Kristen Sinema would lose her seat if she didn't go this way. I think she's going to lose her seat if she keeps going this way. I mean, she's poised to even lose her primary. There have been studies. There's studies on it, like moving into the future, and the polls like of what's been going on in Arizona. It's not looking good for her. She's like she's stabbing her own base in the back pretty hard. She's not doing well with Democrats right now. And she's not going to get enough Republican support to stay in office.
That or whatever. But when it comes to real people that need real help, this type of shit doesn't help. You know, you mentioned soup kitchens and shit earlier. If you want to get real effective political change, find a local candidate to support. You can do national level fundraising or international fundraising in order to support local candidates at a city level or even at a state level, or work on like mutual aid programs, these different systems that can exist that can subsume and then replace these capitalist systems. You know, you can replace things like food stamps or daycare or other things. You can build these programs out as well, or find a union that has a political slant and support them, build them up, raise money for that stuff. Like all of these things are things that you can do if you want to affect real political change. Just hopping on to the most popular election that you can to get as many views as possible, and then just try to claim, oh, I'm doing things to make the world better. No, you're not. You just want to be on the presidential election, push your candidate, because that's what gets you the most views, the most money, and the most donations.
Okay, well, I have a minute and 30 seconds. So, look, Destiny, if people can't, like I said, you didn't actually address the two arguments. You didn't address the argument about national elections, because it's about information war plus organization, are what define politics up and down the ballot, okay? And if I'm going to advocate for a third party, which is what I'm doing, I'm not going to tell people to vote for the Democrats. I'm going to get people mad about the Democrats. I'm going to get people mad about the Republicans, and I'm going to broadcast as best of my ability using my platform to get people to go out and build a third party and focus, if they want to get involved in politics and do that work and they have free time to do it, focus your energy on building a third party to whom it may concern. So if I'm interested in building a third party, that's what I'm going to say. You're saying I'm only doing this for views, which is interesting. People like Hassan Piker dwarf me in views, and that's also a pun, I guess. But they dwarf me in views, and they don't advocate for a third party right now. So I don't know why you're saying that's like something that's that's something that's only doing it for clicks and for views. I'm taking a lot of risks taking the position that I am, and it has paid off, but that was based on risk, that's not precedent. The other thing you said is that you guys know no one's going to vote for a third party. I don't think that's true. I think when you look at what Americans believe in terms of the issues, and you look at the platforms of the respective political parties, there is such a vast difference between those two things, then I think the situation is very ripe for a third party right now. And like I said, if people can't vote for their own interests, because you use the soup kitchen charity argument, oh, go vote and help people personally. If people can't vote in their own interests, because the poor people aren't the ones who are voting. Those people who are saying are victims and need our help, they don't vote. If they can't vote in their own interests, why do we have a democracy?
Okay.
I
have democracy.
They have the ability to vote, but I mean, like third parties clearly aren't doing
democracy. If you're just going to vote,
wait, I said a minute 50. Not a minute 45.
I mean, like, and again, like you said, just like all the progressives, like, what's the point of democracy if you won't support my people? Like, why aren't you guys like? You're so stupid. You don't realize that my people are.
Your reason for voting is for other people, and those people aren't going to be getting out there and voting for themselves. Why the fuck do we need democracy? Advocate for an undemocratic technocracy in which Destiny does policies for people's best interests.
Bing Shilling, minute 50. Okay, so we're gonna throw it over to Destiny to respond.
Okay, so when you talk about how, first of all, your position, well, okay, so you vote in the ways that you do, ideally to make a better world for yourself, better world for other people. I guess it depends on why people vote. This idea that like you're voting for poor people that don't vote, I don't understand. You're fundamentally doing the same thing, and you're trying to say also, again, just like really far left progressives would say, it's like, oh, these people, they really support us, they just don't know it yet. Oh, they would support our policies, they just don't know it yet. I mean, like, if there's all these poor people out here that aren't voting, like, why haven't third parties made the argument to them to get them out to vote? It just doesn't happen. They don't go out and they don't vote for third parties because the third parties don't have any like local or state or federal power anywhere in the United States. So there's no point in doing that, right? And then also, when you talk about how like everything you've done is based on risk, not precedent, absolutely not. People come out with extreme points of view all the time. That was your entire branding, was being the most extreme motherfucker you possibly could be. Every single person in here knows it. Your entire branding is being abrasive and screaming. You're like a 2016 Destiny that supports a third party instead of one of the two primary ones. The idea that you can't focus energy on like building a third party on a local level also just doesn't make sense. If it's something that's so fucking important to you, that you think is so important, that you think matters so much, well, I mean, what are you doing to help build a third party? Is it literally just the stuff that also coincidentally empowers you to make more money on YouTube and Twitch? Is it the stuff that helps you build audiences and networks and connections, just like Hassan does on Twitch? Or have you actually stuck your neck out and done things to support third party candidates? Like, are there any local or state level third party candidates you support, or do you not give a fuck about any of that? You just want to hop on and talk about presidential stuff because that's where all the viewership is.
Okay, you're wrong on that account. I have platformed local people running for local elections, like Steven Estrada for the Communist Party of Long Beach in California. So you're completely talking out of your fucking ass. And the idea that I've built my entire brand on being the most extreme person possible, this is such a recklessly stupid thing to say that even surprises me coming from you. My tone may be extreme, my style may be extreme, but in terms of the content of the views I've actually espoused, there's nothing extreme about them. I've reached out to conservatives. I've reached out to even the Trump people and right-wing people, and I've condemned far left extremism. I've condemned extremism across the board. I've called myself, almost ironically, a communist centrist. There's nothing extreme about the actual content of my views. The content of my views is actually very tame and reasonable. Now,
listen, I think he's mixing up like extreme and radical. He's radical, but he's not an extremist.
The things I say, if you discount my views on history and maybe communism and the Soviet Union and maybe China, maybe that would be considered extreme in the United States. But in terms of what I advocate for here, there's nothing extreme about it. So yeah, like I said, and that's especially why there's no precedent for a guy like me, a self-proclaimed Marxist-Leninist who doesn't pander to the extremists and ultra-leftists that say, oh yeah, all elections and politics are meaningless. We should just advocate for revolution now and direct action, whatever the fuck they say. Which is ironically sometimes something Hassan on the low-key flirts with, but he doesn't advocate for entirely. I really forgot the other shit you said before, so refresh my memory.
How can you say you're not an extreme when you literally are talking about like eschewing both political parties and voting third party only, and you call yourself a self-proclaimed Marxist-Leninist? Do you think in the United States those aren't extreme positions?
Do you think we live in an extreme time here in the United States? I think
everybody thinks they live in an extreme time.
Relative to the political climate, what I'm advocating for is very moderate.
You think that a Marxist-Leninist in the United States right now is a moderate position to be in? You think that advocating to only vote for third parties is a moderate thing to believe in?
As far as the majority of people are concerned, I don't think Marxist-Leninist positions have their attention or have any significance among them. But put my Marxism-Leninism aside. I'm advocating for a big tent third party that will reach out to people across the political aisle who merely agree upon the fact that the current political establishment is insular and gate-kept, that doesn't allow up-and-coming people with bright ideas.
I think what Destiny's mixing up is that Hans is saying right now what he's advocating for like a short-term basis is not radical or extreme, but even though his like long-term goals of like a Marxist-Leninist society would be extreme compared to today.
Paul people, whatever you want, we can all agree that regardless of where we stand politically and ideologically, if you're not part of the big club, which is the current establishment, who's in bed with special interests and who all know each other and who all attend their families' weddings and their families', events and social gatherings. If you don't know these people, you don't have a future in politics right now. So I think there needs to be a big tent people's party, a third party that is about saving American democracy from these entrenched two parties which have gatekept the ability for politics to actually give expression to what the American people actually want. And like I said, would you deny that there's a disconnect between the actual policy platforms that Americans mostly agree upon and the platforms of the respective parties? Because most Americans agree with each other when it comes to meat and potatoes issues.
So that's people say this all the time that
Oh, and
meat and potato
Oz,
issues.
your
Americans
gain on your mic, you probably should lower it a little bit. People are having like the
This
same
is
sort of
I don't know. This is not my mic, so I don't know how to work this mic.
Okay, we'll make do then.
Ask him to like push it back.
So I mean, I'm going to hold you to one thing, I guess, because you're dancing away from every other point. Like, you are an extremist. I don't know how you can say that you're not an extremist. Like, when you advocate for a third party and you're trying to avoid the other two political parties, then by definition, like, I'm not saying extremist is bad, or maybe you want to avoid, like, the moral loading of the word, but, like, you must have some pretty extreme positions if, by your own admission, there are these huge nets that are cast by the Republican and the Democratic Party, and you're not caught by either one of those. I don't even think this is the most extreme time in U.S. history, and I would still say that you have, like, very extreme political views. Like, being a Marxist-Leninist is just a pretty extreme, unless you're going to say that, like, oh, you know, there's tons of MLs in the United States, which I think every lefty would shoot themselves if you unironically believe that. Like, there's no way. Everybody knows this. When you talk about how the Republicans and the Democrats are gatekeeping politics, I mean, like, inorganically, there's probably some extent to this going on in terms of, like, deciding who gets to be hosted at large debates and whatnot. Like, I'm sure we can say this happens, but also organically, this probably happens as well, because the Democratic and the Republican Party are so huge, because they include so many different beliefs, because they include so many different types of people, then by definition, it's going to be a little bit exclusionary, because if you want to run as a third party, like, chances are, depending on where you are, you could probably just run as a Republican or a Democrat and you'd be fine. Bernie Sanders is relatively extreme, but when he runs for president, he runs as a Democrat, you know? The idea that also that, like, all Americans agree, like, you keep repeating.
Also, in a lot of places, both political parties pushed for laws that made it much harder for smaller third parties to come up and even be on the ballot. Like, ballot access is another really big thing that third parties have a problem getting in. That was pushed through by the parties.
Trust me, they'd love my platform if they just knew about it. A lot of people know about these platforms. They just don't like them that much. And then finally, I don't think there is agreement broadly on, like, the quote unquote meat and potatoes issues, because we've got these huge political divides, again, that you've said do exist in the United States. It's hard to say Americans agree on meat and potatoes issues when Republicans and Democrats are more polarized than they ever have been when it comes to how to address the problems in the United States. Meat and potatoes issues might be something like, you know, the earned income tax credit or child tax credit, which are, like, hardly democratically supported things. Meat and potato issues might be things like who should get health care, which is something that is supported by the Democratic Party, not the Republican Party. You know, free education or easy access to education.
So you're saying my position is extreme because I'm advocating for a third party.
This fucking
well,
man.
Like I said, you didn't address my argument. We live in an extreme political climate.
Is he at an e-girl's house? Whose house is this?
Is not something that's so extreme. But
is this Dinkle's room?
Look at the election of Trump and all the shit that's gone down for the past, 4 years or more. I just don't see it as extreme. You say, oh, you're extreme because you're a Marxist-Leninist. Well, I just don't think the Americans are familiar with what Marxism-Leninism is, or how Marxism-Leninism might actually be something, or Marxist-Leninist leaders, at least, might be people that they're interested in. I'm trying to make the case and show them that. I don't expect the majority of Americans to have sympathetic views toward Marxism-Leninism or to my specific ideology, and I don't blame them for it. I'm trying to make the case, and I think Marxist-Leninists need to...
Also, just so you know, all subs, donations, and everything will be read out afterwards. I love you guys. Thank you so much.
Marxism is actually useful in being able to actually maneuver politically and win politically. So that's something I actually want to prove and practice. Now, I think the main thrust of your argument is basically that, see, I'm in a position where I'm able to experiment. You're saying, oh, it's copium that you're thinking that everyone agrees with you. Wait, I'm not necessarily saying everyone agrees with me. But what I am doing is I'm trying to establish an ability to experiment with what people really want and just be open to the fact that what people really want in this country is different from what's being represented to them in the form of the establishment. Whether this establishment is gate-kept organically or inorganically is completely irrelevant. I don't care whether it's inorganic or organic. But it's actually funny that one of the examples for inorganic gatekeeping was something that had to actually be proven by WikiLeaks. And that's the only reason you fucking know about it in the first place. If it wasn't for WikiLeaks, we wouldn't have even have known about that. So who knows what else goes on behind the scenes?
Wait, what was proven by WikiLeaks exactly? Just
the collaboration between CNN and Hillary Clinton in the Democratic debates.
Sure. So that was definitely bad, but I don't think that rises to the level of gatekeeping, right? Where somebody was passing off questions. It shouldn't have happened, but that gatekeeping, an argument it does not make. When we talk
for people like Bernie Sanders to
it was bad. It was horrible.
I think that comes up to gatekeeping. I think it does.
Gatekeeping the party from outsiders, perceived outsiders.
Sure, but Bernie also came up through the Democratic Party and ran in that primary, and in both of them enjoyed a great deal of support within the Democratic Party, right? So to say that he's like an example of like gatekeeping, that's a pretty shitty job at gatekeeping if that's the case.
Well, the point is he rose so much from scratch without any institutional support within the Democrats, and even then they had to work against him. So I think that's actually a really good example of gatekeeping.
If arguably like one of the most successful politicians in the past like 5 years, just in terms of like national media coverage during a presidential election, is somebody that was gatekept. I mean, in that case, I don't care about gatekeeping because I guess it doesn't work very well if Bernie Sanders is able to do it off of small donations without enjoying any formal support.
The small donations were something that were not anticipated by the political elite within the Democrats.
Well, also, I mean, if we're going to go through this argument, I don't like this argument. If we're going to go through this argument, then we would say like voter restrictive laws that Republicans passed don't matter because Arizona and Georgia both voted for Democrats, right?
Like you, Destiny, back in 2016 or 2015, they're all sitting around and saying, nothing new under the sun. It's always been the same. Everything's been the same. There's no possibility Trump's going to win the Republican primary. He won it. So there's no possibility he's going to win the election. He won it. So there's no possibility that a guy like Bernie has a chance. He did have a good chance. You know what I'm saying? People like you have always been on the losing side of actual history, especially
none of this makes sense because all of the people that you're talking about exist within the realm of the main two political parties. You're using my argument. I don't understand why you think that like you can say like this is an example of anything that supports your end, especially if these are extreme times in U.S. history where there is an opportunity for a great realignment of the political parties.
That I was a Bernie supporter in 2016. So I wanted Bernie to win. I'm
not talking about you being a Bernie supporter. I'm just saying that like if there was going to be a great realignment of like political parties, the third party is going to rise up to do something. It seems like 2016 would have been a good chance.
Third parties are going to spontaneously rise and do something. I've always been consistent about the fact that this is something that requires will, not deference to some external objective reality. Second of all, I was a Bernie supporter back in 2016. All I've done is in contrast to you, the so-called omniliberals and the Hassan Chappell people, whoever the hell these people are, I am trying to seriously and honestly reflect upon the reasons for Bernie's failure. Now, it's not just the establishment. It's also an issue internally that I've also relentlessly critiqued and ruthlessly critiqued before. But it stands, as far as my views are concerned, and I haven't seen you address this in any substantive way, that the time is ripe for a third party.
If the time is ripe for the third party, then where are they? I can't, like, in a way, you almost have, like, an inarguable...
I said...
Let me point you...
I said... Destiny, continue.
Hey, Jesus, fuck. Okay, you keep saying that, like, the time...
He's still talking.
Destiny, yeah.
I know, I'm just... See how long he goes on for.
He's still going? All right. He's going.
Okay, go on.
Okay, then.
Go on.
He's still going. What's he talking about? Actually, I want to hear.
All I'm saying is that the time is ripe for a third party. Then where is it? I can't argue against this like nirvanistic, like, I don't want to say fallacy, but this nirvana that you're presenting. It's like the time is right. It's gonna happen now. It's gonna happen now. It's gonna, like, I'm sorry, like, I don't know.
It's gonna happen. I'm saying it should happen.
Look, okay, wait, Haas, I'll give him. I'm doing the 130. I swear to God, you will have equal time to talk. I just want to make sure people can hear what he's saying. Destiny.
Where are the third parties? Okay, like, it's funny because I accused you of engaging in massive copium, and then you literally engage in massive copium. Like, Americans just don't know what ML is. Like, if these poor people that didn't even know how to vote knew what dialectical materialism is, they would understand the material conditions they live in, and they could apply this philosophical lens. I literally wrote down that you mentioned dialectical materialism. I literally wrote. I'm just gonna keep talking. I literally wrote quotes. I'm writing quotes of what you're saying.
I
So,
didn't
quote,
say-
I don't see it as extreme. Quote, Americans just don't know what ML is. Quote, dialectical materialism. Quote, I can maneuver, it can maneuver and work politically. Then where is it? Marxist-Leninism has existed for 100 years. Where is it? Where is it in the United States?
My words out of context. I said, here's what I said about dialectical
This microphone.
materialism. I basically just
Please.
said that it could be proven that
Back up from the mic a little bit. I can't hear anything you're saying. You got to back up from the mic.
He's going for that wide tone.
can prove their ability as political leaders and organizers and lead by example and therefore prove the merit of dialectical materialism in practice. I'm not talking about, disseminating esoteric theories and philosophies to people that they secretly care about dialectical materialism. I'm just saying the utility of dialectical materialism is something that can be proven in practice by means of savvy and conscientious political operatives who are using these theories to actually win people over and win victory.
Yeah, his mic is constantly deep fried.
No, it hasn't, but that's why I'm here, because I believe it can happen. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But to say that I'm coping when I'm merely talking about something I think should happen and something that I'm committing to contribute as best as I can to happen is ridiculous. If I say, I'm going to try and do something, that's
he
copium.
sounds like an Xbox Live clip.
Okay,
of
so
what
then here's a
British
question.
people
What's something that's being...
Okay, Haz, you have 20 seconds left. I want to give you time to finish.
Why? Because I'm entertaining the possibility that it can happen. If I fail, I'll learn from my failure and adapt. That's what praxis means. But I'm not going to sit idly
Praxis time,
and
boys.
have this guarantee in an establishment which has had decades to prove itself to the American people and has failed. So I'm going to keep failing and get better. And how is that cope? I don't understand.
So you keep saying people want something that's not being represented by the establishment.
Yeah.
What is it in your mind that a third party can offer that's not being represented by the establishment?
Sure. I think when it comes to broad issues, like, for example, how exactly are we going to address this fourth industrial revolution and this rapid change in the nature of jobs and work and the way people are
Is that
employed?
literally not what the infrastructure bill aims to do?
The infrastructure can't even get passed.
Not yet. It hasn't been. But if the infrastructure bill, that's being pushed by one of the two major political parties,
Wait.
You're not
Okay.
getting that bill.
Okay, if Fred, do you want to expand? It's still your time, so if you want to expand, you can. Before I hand back over to
You're not gonna. That's the worst thing you could have said, Destiny. The infrastructure bill is precisely an example of why the things Americans need can't actually get done under the leadership of the two parties or the Democratic Party right now. I mean, it's the worst thing you could have said debate-wise. Wow, take the L. Anyway, what you said about I was losing.
Okay, so when you say how exactly are we going to address this fourth industrial revolution and rapid change of nature of jobs, right? So this word salad of yang shit, okay? So the infrastructure bill literally aims to try to address some of that. But if you're telling me that the infrastructure bill can't even pass with 50 Democrats in the Senate, how the fuck is a third party going to make a measurable difference here?
The third party is actually going to overcome the false divisions created by the Republicans and Democrats, and in my view, and I'm going to at least work to give it a shot, unify the American people on the basis of their, what I consider, common interests.
What are the false divisions? Wait, what are the false... Can we do point by point instead of the 30-minute fucking ramble? What are the false divisions created by the Democrats?
The divisions between the Republicans and Democrats don't actually reflect, in my view, authentic, objective divisions as far as the real interests of the American people are concerned. Rather, they are niche cultural, propaganda, ideological differences that completely go beyond, materially speaking, what matters.
Okay, how are you to decide? So if there is somebody that's literally so my mom, for instance, is a single issue voter on things like abortion, how are you to decide for a voter, that doesn't matter to you? You call it meaningless culture war. But
is the thing that brought her to be passionate about politics.
What?
Abortion is the thing that drew her into being passionate about politics.
Okay.
And running off of a mass movement, a mass popular movement, will draw a great deal of people disillusioned or otherwise uninterested by the current political system and political alternatives to be interested in politics. Trump got a lot of people to be interested in politics who otherwise wouldn't have been. Bernie also did that.
Hold on, you're not answering. You're rambling. You're not answering my question.
The reasons why people are interested in politics differ, and this is the explanation for single issue voters, because that issue was this ideological and religious and narrative that sufficed to actually draw them to be interested in politics in the first place. The question is, if we live in a democracy, why are there single issue voters? Why isn't it enough to be interested in politics for the sake of fighting on behalf of what you consider your interest or the people's interest? Well, it's precisely because we have a very big deficiency within our so-called democracy. And I think a third party should run on the position of saving.
Okay, I'm just going to restate the question. So, who are you to say that some of these social issues that people single issue vote on, how can you call that a false division when that is a real division and those issues are important to those people? Or do you think you have some magical way of getting them to be interested
Yeah, because at
in
the end
more?
of the day, the way in which it actually impacts their life is not all that significant or profound.
So then you're retreating back to the argument earlier where like they just don't know what's good for them, but I'm going to show them so that they know what's good for them.
I definitely believe the American people right now do not necessarily know or have articulated the language of what their interests are. But I don't.
But you somehow tapped into that.
But and this is where you're creating a straw man, which is unsustainable as far as what I've actually said. I'm not claiming to know exactly what it is the American people want. All I'm committing to is a willingness to reach out and discover what that is. I'm just rejecting the idea that the only manifestation of the American people's interest is being reflected at the level of the two-party system.
Okay, so that's awesome. But right now, we're not talking about politics then. So politics is trying to secure, politics is about securing political power. That's what it's about. If you're not claiming to know what people want, then you can't have a platform that represents them. If you just want to reach out and discover what people want, then you're not engaged in politics. You're not engaged in politics at that point. You're doing like polling data.
Wait. Okay. Pause for a moment. I just want to say to both of you, if we're both talking at the same time, nobody hears shit.
Yeah, I know, but if I stop, he just keeps going. This guy's talking like twice as much as me.
This why. Okay.
Stop crying.
Okay. So
anyway,
okay. I did it. Okay. My major rule, my one rule is when I'm talking, nobody else is talking. Okay. I'm not gonna
be muted.
So, since the problem is when you do the point by point, people are interrupting more, and when it comes to the other thing, when I do 5-minute diatribes, people don't want 5-minute diatribes. So I'm gonna do my best to control this, but I'm just gonna have Destiny go. I'm gonna try to shorten it to 30 seconds to 1 minute instead, so it could be more. So Destiny, then Haas, and we'll do 30 seconds to 1 minute, so it can be more point by point, but also.
I want to go point by point, but the problem is if I try to go point by point, when I go 1 point, he goes like another 2-minute point. So it seems like it's like so much like talking, and then I either have to scream over him.
Wasting time, dude. I got places to be.
Obviously, you don't if you agreed to do this. You have no obligation to be here. So when you said that you're not claiming to know what people want, if that's the case, then you're not doing politics. Politics is all about like representing constituents. We live in a democracy. Unless you want to be some authoritarian dictator, by definition, if you're doing political action, you're doing action on behalf of other people to secure some type of political power. For you to try to skirt all of that and to avoid any like responsibility or strong claims or put a stake in the ground saying this is what I believe in and this is what I think we want, and to just say, I'm just trying to reach out and discover, go be a pollster.
Yeah, it's a philosophically and politically, ideologically untenable view or whatever, because politics is about building power, but one of the aspects of real politics is a genuine openness as to what being able to listen to the people. I mean, if you want to talk about I'm a Marxist-Leninist, to me, I learned this from Maoism. It's something called the mass line. You don't necessarily begin with the assumption you know what the people want. You just have a willingness to build an institution, to build an apparatus, to build some kind of organization from which you are going to enter into a certain dialogue.
There's going to be a lot of
dialogue
democratic
or interaction, if you want to use a less
disillusionment.
loaded term, with the masses of people. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you already know what they want. You will discover what they want by actually drawing a base of contact with them and drawing support from them and reaching out to them. And media is probably the most important part of that. Media was the foundation of, for example, the Russian Bolshevik Party. Medium was the foundation probably of every alternative revolutionary or third party in the history of the world.
So I've done conversations like this before. So It's so strange. As much as you hate Vosh, you talk so much like him. You say so much and so little at the same time. So, like, boiling down everything that you said before about how when you engage in your political practice, you will discover what the people want is a direct contradiction to what you said earlier when you said, and I quote, people want something different that's not being represented by the establishment. How do you know people truly want something that's not being represented by the establishment if you don't even know what they want yet? And part of your political journey is going to be discovering what they want.
I just said the 1 minute back and forth, Destiny.
Yeah, what I said is not illogical. I'm just literally following and I'm writing in quotes like your very own statements. I guess if you want to address that contradiction, then go, how can you know that people want something different that's not being represented by the establishment, but then go on and admit, I don't know what people want. I'm going to discover that as I do like my political experiment. Like, again, you haven't even described to me like what's missing. What is it that you're going to offer people that they don't already have or that they need?
It's very simple logic. You can know what people don't want without knowing exactly what they want positively. For example, if someone doesn't want to eat shit, you don't know what their favorite food is. They just don't want to eat the shit. You just said something completely stupid and illogical.
If people don't want to eat the shit, then why did a record number of people vote for it in the last election?
Because there's a steaming pile of diarrhea in their view that was the alternative to that shit.
Yeah, but they could have just not voted. You have some of the most engaged voters in the history of presidential voting. How are you going to tell me that they're not interested?
On Trump. Now you're here.
It's all
doesn't even fucking work.
The government works exactly as it's supposed to.
It was a referendum on Trump. You voted out Trump. Here you are. The government. You know what government's about, right? It's not about to.
Listen, people are not that happy with Biden. People didn't like Biden that much. Trump and Hillary Clinton were both the historically least liked candidates in the history of America. And Trump and Biden weren't that much more liked either. People really didn't like Trump. They didn't want him to be in office anymore. That's what got them activated, not necessarily the Democrats. And that's why they lost so much ground in the House. And that's why they barely retained the Senate. Well, my bad. That's why they barely retained the House and just barely got the Senate.
Country is historically divided and polarized in ways that it probably never has been before, at least as the polarization goes.
Represented.
What?
How is the will of the people being represented right now?
The will of the people is being represented right now because half of Americans don't agree with the other half on what should happen. So the government is having a really hard time getting anything done. But that's what you would expect from a government that is representing the democratic interests of the people. This country is legitimately divided. Biden got more votes than any president in U.S. history, and Trump was number 2. So obviously, there's going to be a difficult time if the government's power is logically extending from its constituents. If the constituents disagree, then there's going to be a really hard time for the government to get anything done, of course.
The only site at which the will of the people can ever find representation is in the current established options they have on the shelves. There's not a possibility for a different product in your view. It's only what's on the shelf.
There could be a possibility, but the onus is on you to present that, and all you've told me is you're going to try to discover it in your future streams.
You can claim this with absolute certainty somehow.
Never said that. It is possible that in the future there might be conditions that arise that make a third party likely to rise. But the problem is the two political parties that exist right now are incredibly entrenched, both in our media and our finances and in our government and in everybody's minds, that it seems really difficult for a third party to rise up and conquer. And you haven't given me a good argument for why a third party even should. You haven't even given me like positions. Like when I asked you like what can a third party offer that the primary two can't, your response was like, how are we going to address the fourth industrial revolution and rabbit? You said you were giving me a Yang answer. You're not telling me anything. That's not a policy position. That's not like legislation. This is just like some vague shit that you can talk about on Twitter that has no real teeth behind it.
Destiny, there are plenty of bright policymakers who want to be given a platform in this third party. I confess, I am not a policymaker. Obviously, broad narratives are what's going to define entirely new parties. Yeah, when I'm saying something as vague as the fourth industrial revolution, I am talking about a very broad issue that has to be addressed in an equally broad way and politically speaking. Now, if it was just a matter of one or two policies, it's not a matter of one or two policies. It's not a matter of 3 policies or 4 policies. It's a matter of a whole multiplicity of policies, which are only unified by these broad narratives or whatever, these broad so-called word salads that you're giving. If it was just the sum total of opposing policy prescriptions, obviously we wouldn't be talking about anything. But it stands right now that we can see that there actually is a certain reason why some policies are able to make it and others don't. Policies which don't threaten the special interests have a chance. Policies which threaten the current special interests don't have a chance. So it's almost as simple as that. The two parties are bought out. by special interests.
Well, that's a whole other conversation if you want to have that. But so, like, when you say like a whole multiplicity of policies that are painted by this broad narrative are what you're talking about, how do you then connect with earlier? You were saying poor people are like about like meat and potatoes issues. Are you going to have this multiplicity of political discussion with them? You're going to bring this like broad thing of new policies. Like every poor person is going to hear this and think you're just some random politician that's full of shit that's offering.
Hold on, broad narratives are what give expression to people's belief that they can actually address their meat and potatoes concerns politically.
What's a unique broad narrative that isn't encompassed by one of the two political parties?
No.
What? No. What is it? What is a unique broad narrative?
The poll is split. Really?
Unique broad narrative. Sure. One of them is the current political system.
The debate's on whether we should vote for the Democrats.
The interests of special interests and not the people. If we want to even have the ability to give political representation to the will of the people, we need a third party that's not already captured
I don't
by
think
these
the country's really split in half.
established interests and these special interests.
Yeah, so literally, like both political parties say this all the time. The current political system is rigged. Like the Republican Party right now believes the election was stolen. Trump constantly said about how the current political system is rigged. Bernie Sanders was a huge candidate. He said that parts of the political system are rigged. The Justice Democrats talk about all the time about how the political system is rigged. Even Nancy Pelosi talks about how corporate interest is rigged. So that's not a unique broad narrative.
What about the two-party system? Is that something they talk about?
No. So you're telling me that your broad narrative that establishes your third party is there should be third parties.
Yeah.
I can't beat that one. That was the unassailable argument that I was waiting for, I guess. Okay.
Hold on, Destiny. Let me ask you a question. What is democracy?
That's a really broad question. Ideally, you have a group
of democracy.
What is what?
Quickly. What's the content of democracy?
What?
Ideally, it's some group of people whose will is being represented in some way.
Okay, so what does that look like concretely?
Democracy on its own doesn't look like anything. I mean, we could talk about like a representative democracy. We could talk about like the democracy in the United States. You could talk about voting in a classroom.
My position is that a third party is the only manner by which American democracy can be restored or built or revived, however you want to phrase it. Then obviously the burden is not upon me to say like, oh, this is specifically the issue that they have to focus upon. But there are many bright ideas. There are many ideas that people have. I personally think that we should be looking at the early 20th century and late 19th century issue of land reform, which was actually what formed the foundation, inadvertently at least, of the New Deal Democrats. Although they didn't pursue direct land reform themselves, it actually had influence on the housing reforms and the housing legislation that eventually would get passed, especially if I recall correctly, in the post-war era.
Yeah, I don't care what policies Americans supported 100 years ago. I'm sorry, I don't think that's politically relevant right now.
No, I actually think it is relevant because I'm also a political theorist and a theorist. So I don't know. We don't have to get in the nitty-gritty.
How is this meat and potatoes issues? Which Americans do you think know anything about this?
But land reform is probably the most decisive issue or policy that actually leads to political change historically.
Okay, how do you know that most people care about this then? Where do you find that support at?
Because if you theorize politically, the basic social contract between a given state and its people lies in a state being able to give
he's
its
a Marxist
people some
Leninist. He's
kind
not
of
right-wing.
economic, and I don't mean this in like the loaded leftist sense, some kind of means of production, just in the sense of like a solid economic basis with which they can actually engage in economic activity. So governments, if you look at almost any state in history, founds its basis upon this type of land grants or giving titles of nobility and feudalism, or during the time of the French Revolution, especially with Napoleon. I don't want to get too in the nitty gritty of this, but yeah, land reform is a linchpin of political change, and it's the foundation of states. Whether it's directly phrased as land reform or not, like the stability of the American state in the post-war era was sustained by, for example, those post-New Deal housing policies and things like that, which gave Americans like the minimum of a stable economic livelihood.
Can you give me an example of what do you mean by land reform? What kind of land reform are we talking about?
Well, today that could obviously either be actual land reform of giving people actual like just straight land and space. It could be something focused on housing, like what they're doing in China. They're giving grants of people to own single home apartments.
When you say giving people land, you mean we're going to do plots in Montana where we start giving that to people that live in California and hope they move out there? Or what do you mean by giving people land? What happens to apartment complexes? Like what?
Some kind of means of having like a minimal economic. It could even be UBI. It could be a lot of things.
So UBI is land reform.
It has to function as the equivalent to what land reforms have historically functioned as politically.
Wait 1 second. We have 30 minutes left before this is over. And so if there's any points you want to get...
Debt forgiveness is an important thing too.
Haz.
He's just talking over.
Do you have a hearing problem?
Go ahead, Dylan.
Okay, thank you. So for the next 30 minutes, if you have any points you want to get in, now would be the time to get them in. I'm just telling you this now. So afterwards, you're not like, fuck, I wanted to say this. So if there's anything in the back of your pocket that you have yet to bring up and you want to bring up, now would be the time. Okay.
There's a really big... So here's the thing, like, both political parties really want to have a... Oh, who's that?
Hi, what's up?
I'm just chilling. You like my outfit? I'm a vampire.
Nice. Looks awesome.
Great.
Thanks.
Is she a third party vampire or Democrat vampire?
I'm Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so whatever. He's British, so he doesn't participate in American politics.
He's labor.
Boris Johnson vampire. Okay.
That's nice. They're kind of like matching costumes because Haas is a fucking time vampire over here, right? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
You can continue. You got 30 minutes left.
Wait, so yeah, most Americans want a third party, okay? This is true. Most Americans do want a third party. I think it's around like 60% want a third party right now, all of them. Republicans want a third party more than Democrats do, and they want that third party to go more to the right than Democrats do. Democrats at the moment and Democrat leaning independents are pretty split on where they want the party to go. But they even want a third party too.
The problem is that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are incredibly broad. They encompass a lot of different political ideology. When you can go all the way left and find somebody like AOC or Bernie Sanders, and then all the way right and find somebody like Manchin or Sinema in the same political party, it's going to be really difficult for a third party to find space in there. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. There might be a third party that makes the case. We come up and like, hey, you know what? Here's some issues that people really care about, and nobody's talking about them, and we're going to hammer these issues, and we're going to start to gain political power doing it. But you haven't presented me any of those issues. Talking about stuff that happened in the 1900s, or trying to talk about stuff that is happening in China, like that's a good thing to sell to the American people. Like these are just not issues that are going to win with like the meat and potatoes poor people that you think aren't voting because they don't have a third party to represent them.
Yeah, I think this whole debate really boils down to Destiny's inability to look beyond the appearance of things and actually think about what is the real essence behind these things. Like, why is it that Americans
Destiny is unable to see the essence, the ethereal.
Why is it, for example, you just mentioned this, Americans have a negative view of China? Is that because they necessarily do, or is it because of a deeper and more fundamental reason? But regardless of the fact, I think it can be summed up simply and neatly as this. We are supposed to have a government by, for, and of the people. This is the standard to which we are supposed to hold the current American government, as well as the current so-called representatives of the American people. My only claim is that they don't satisfy the criterion of a government by, for, and of the people, which works on behalf of the interests of the people, rather than special interests and entrenched interests and insular establishments, which claim to represent the objective facts and the truth and the will of the people, but in actual fact and in actual reality utterly failed to do that, just going off of the inability to get out widespread voter turnout, with the exception of these single...
I'm not going to lie, I would like to see the judges pick Haas to win.
Trump, but even then, turnout
that'd be funny.
Wasn't really that impressive as far as the democracy.
Destiny, are you okay?
Maybe relative to America.
Oh my gosh, he's being hacked!
If for a so-called democracy,
what's happening?
Not that impressive.
I mean, the problem is you haven't demonstrated, like, by, for, and of the
Holy
people.
Fuck, dude, it's
none
Watch
of these
Dogs,
things
man.
are third parties
Oh my
right now.
gosh.
You don't have any third parties by the people. They're all incredibly small.
That's
They have
the
no
thing.
power. You don't have any third parties for the people. They all have niche issues that not many people.
Destiny was never real. Destiny was never a real person. He was always AI. You've been arguing with a highly advanced AI at this very moment. Fuck you.
Do claim to represent the will of the people. All I'm saying is, I want to.
I've never
fight
seen that
for an
before.
alternative. I want people to look at things like movement, or now I think it's no longer movement. It's the People's Party right now. Look at big tent, broad coalition parties that are trying to build third parties in this country, and and fight and build, and don't be afraid to risk building those alternatives.
Is
Now,
there a
the reason-
single third party like that in the United States that you'd be comfortable putting money on getting a single federal seat or two federal seats?
No, because it's not a matter of a gamble. This is actually a point in politics.
This is
Doesn't
all a gamble. You
independent-
admitted earlier that aren't you gambling for the future?
Doesn't wait. Do independents count as a third party, or is it, you know, an independent cannot be necessarily a part of the Democratic caucus? Like King and Sanders cannot necessarily be a part of the Democratic caucus. They're not a part of the party.
Thing outside
On the
of our
Senate
will.
level.
I am saying there is a moment in politics in which actual will becomes decisive. I am not saying that on its own there's this party that's going to make it. We have to fight to make it that way, because this is a moment that demands our actual will, our actual intervention. Why would I even be here? Why would I even be live? Why would I even be talking about this if I didn't think people actually have to do something and actually have the will to fight for this? If I thought it was just going to happen on its own,
I don't think there's any Greens in
right now,
Congress
Destiny.
at the moment.
Can you summarize that?
Yeah, I'm not saying something's just going to happen on its own spontaneously. I am actually using my platform to fight for this alternative, to convince people, specifically politically conscientious and educated people with spare time to care about politics, to do this, right? They
Okay,
haven't
and then
done
can
it
you
yet.
you say I'm not responding to something, can you state this in the form of an argument? What is the argument here?
Can you demonstrate I didn't make an argument if you want to do that game?
I'm not trying to play a game. So this is what you said. You're treating this reality as a matter of pure external objective thing outside of our will. There is a moment in politics in which actual will becomes decisive. On its own,
Wait,
that
wait,
this
wait,
party-
wait,
we have to fight-
I gotta hear. Okay, can we stop for a second? I didn't hear what the question was. So, Dusty, can you restate the question so we can have House respond to the question?
I don't know what the argument is that I'm supposed to respond to. That there's going to be some magical shonen-esque Naruto figure that's going to come up that we're all going to put our will behind. Like, you can't, like, it sounds like a 14, it sounds like the Occupy Wall Street kids, honestly. Like, and I admire, I'm sorry that I interrupted your question with my answer. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's not
My bad.
clicking
Yep,
for you.
keep going.
It's just not clicking for you.
My
You
bad.
just
I'm
said
so sorry.
again.
Yep.
Oh,
I just repeated you word for word. That's what I
You
said. I'm so
just
sorry.
said, Destiny, you're really angry. You need to chill.
I'm
You
losing
just
it
said,
right now.
Destiny, it's okay. It's just the internet. Destiny, you just said
What the hell
a
is happening?
Naruto guy is going to appear out of nowhere. You just made the argument again, the straw man that I'm saying something is just going to happen out there. You literally ignore and dodge the argument. What I'm literally saying is no, I'm not saying something is just magically going to happen. I'm advocating people to do things.
So this is the second
actually
part of what I
make
was
it
getting
happen.
to, right? So if you are on the end of this saying, no, I'm advocating for this, I want to intervene, I want to have some sort of intervention, I'm going to fight to make this, what are you fighting for? And when your answer to what are you fighting for is, well, I'm going to ask people and find out. Like, you're putting a cart before the horse. You're already declaring that you're going to have some huge fight for a third party, and you don't even know what you're offering yet. You don't even know, other than these like empty platitudes of like the fourth industrial revolution and the dialectical materialistic way of analyzing the land reforms of the 1900s. Like, nobody cares about this shit. No
What is this
American,
prediction?
especially no meat and potatoes, poor voting American, gives a fuck about any of this shit. Nobody's any of the
made
fuck
this
you're talking
prediction?
about. I don't even
Alex?
know what the fuck you're talking about. And my job is to do this
that's
shit
what
all
I'm
day on
getting
fucking
to. So
YouTube
listen,
and Twitch. So like, if you're telling me, if you're,
okay, I can't.
It's just YouTube, bro.
I know
have
that's what I'm
to
trying to.
respond.
I just want to do it.
Okay.
Can you please
Jesus.
respond and
Yeah.
move it over to House?
Like, if you were to come here and you were like, you know what? I think that there are these 3 or 4 things. None of these political parties are talking about this shit. We need to do something. Instead, you literally admitted earlier the biggest point for why your third party is arguing something that nobody else is arguing. That biggest point was that they were arguing in favor of a third party. That's it. That was the most unique thing about a third party, is that they want a third party to exist. When you're actually willing to admit that foundational epistemic circularity for your entire justification for existing, it's like, well, what the fuck is even the point of what you're doing, right? That's like saying like, hey, you've got 2 teams in basketball. We should have a third team. Why? Because nobody else is advocating for a third team. Well, what's that third team going to do? Advocate for itself to exist. Okay, what the fuck is the point?
Let me be very clear. So, Destiny, it's not the job of ordinary people to care about all this complex stuff I am. But for someone who like goes on stream and acts like they're like this extremely politically informed person and this like smart guy, it is actually your job to sit the fuck down and actually try to think this through a
I
little
have
bit.
something
You
to say.
can't
Give me a
feign
second.
ignorance and pretend to be some dipshit fucking League of Legends gamer, which you are, admittedly, but you're pretending to
come
be
the
the
attacks.
contrary.
Try not to get
you
too
have
mad,
stay
okay?
with me and not, dialectical. Just because you don't know these theories and you're just an ignorant person, it's not really an excuse. Now, second of all, Destiny, my position has been very clear. You're saying, all you're advocating is for a third party. Yeah, but for why? Because policies can't even be passed which go against the interests of
And the
special
third party can't pass them.
Yeah, but I think a third party.
Then what's the point?
Destiny,
let's let him finish.
Dylan, can you shut this guy up? Am I talking or no?
I just told him to let you finish.
Yeah, Destiny.
I'm so sorry.
My whole position is a third
You play
party
League of
can
Legends.
actually give
Opinion discarded.
representation, enter into contact with the American people, put forward policies and proposals that are going to work for the interests of the American people, and there's not going to be special interest or captured, entrenched, established interests which are going to stop them or prevent them. Okay. Now, as far as what exactly that's going to look like, what you're demanding of me is an absurdity. You're basically saying I should single-handedly draft every single detailed policy proposal.
Never said
of the
that.
third party.
That's a straw man fallacy.
Let him finish, Destiny.
He's straw manning.
Destiny.
He's extremely immature. It's okay. He's
Oh
used
my
to it.
gosh.
But anyway,
It's crumbling.
Destiny,
The
you're
last 20
basically
minutes.
trying to say that I need to personally, draft these points. But you're saying, oh, it's so stupid that you're just saying there should just be a third party. But that's just because we know the current two parties
We should get a sewer slide.
can't
You're right.
give expression to what the American people want, not on the basis of the merit of these ideas and the policies, but because of these external overgrowths on our American democracy. When I'm saying I want a third party, all I'm effectively advocating for is American democracy. I'm advocating for democracy. Now, I don't claim...
Here, okay, wait, here, with Hans. Here's the thing. Destiny keeps saying the two parties are so broad. You're right, they are broad because there's only two of them. They've been really entrenched for a long time, and there's no viable option for you to move outside of the party to get things done on like a national level. It's not just going to work. So obviously people get funneled into the two parties because there's nothing else for them to do. People want a third party or third parties because they don't feel represented by the parties that we have right now. So the parties would focus on other things. Technically, you could take this argument literally everywhere in every country, like on the planet could also have two parties, and that could be like legally in their constitution they can't have more than two parties, but they'd still have the same people in Congress. They just be in like the same party, but they'd vote the same exact ways. But like people don't like that. People aren't represented like that, and they're held to different standards, and you're still held to the party if you're in that party. If you're in the Democratic Party, you still have to pay dues. A lot of things come with that, and not just like the D or R next to your name.
And you need to find issues, because this is where these political moments start. These political moments don't start with some like random person saying, I'm going to make a third party. They usually start with some problem that neither, like, or not even neither, that no entity is addressing at that point in time. This is where people on the ground, these are these moments of action where people gain a great deal of political power, is when these moments come up and there is nobody offering a solution to any of these problems. For you to sit here and say, you're demanding that I fix everything, that I give the perfect utopia. I'm not saying that at all. I just want like a couple broad strokes that don't involve something from the fucking 19th century, or don't involve you using the terms dialectical materialism and meat and potatoes issues in the same fucking paragraph of explanation. It doesn't make any sense. If you want to advocate for a third party, you should be able to have some like broad issue, some broad narrative, something you're pushing that people want, and you need to be able to defend it. If that's too much for you, then you're basically asking me to attack a utopian third party that doesn't exist, that might exist at some point in the future, that you're asking people to suffer real material harm for right now to try to bring it into existence.
So 1, 2. The first thing you're saying, you think it's somehow a contradiction between talking about dialectical materialism and meat and potatoes issues.
I just said that
when
argument.
The whole point of dialectical materialism.
That argument could be used for any country. If you just delete all of their parties and have like the liberal and conservative party, you'd have the same people in Congress, but then you'd be like, oh, the parties are so broad. Look.
Almost an axiom of computers. Like that's how fucking computers work. You use a lot to get a little. It takes a lot of complexity to discover simple things. I don't know like why you're acting like it's such a huge contradiction. But regardless of that, to actually address what you said,
you don't want stupid
like
shit from the 19th century about having two parties.
Oh, everyone talks about American democracy across the aisle. Well, all you're doing here is meta-narrativizing the whole debate and like complaining about not being able to go point by point. Why don't you actually talk about the content of what they mean by American democracy? When I say we don't have current American democracy, I mean, regardless of what the American people want, even if I ideologically disagree with it, it can't get passed because there is an institutional and establishment impediment, the special interests and so on and so on. Now, if they mean, oh, we're just fighting for democracy, like, what do they mean by that? Because clearly I mean something radically different. Now, you're saying, oh, what is it you're risking for Americans to suffer so much material harm for? I think it's very clear that, again, you haven't addressed the argument about the issue of scale. right now, if the Republicans win, more people may be harmed, and that's the argument you may make. But when you introduce the factor of time,
It's a really long
and scale,
second.
like generations from now, or even 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, your argument collapses. What if by
He's
not
still
doing
going.
something now, it should be wrapping up soon. Yeah.
15 minutes.
Yeah. What if by not doing something now, you're risking so much for the future? You know, you're meta-narrativizing, saying, "Oh, this is just like March, and this is just like this."
I've given you extra time. I gotta make sure Destiny.
Dylan, stop cutting him off.
You can really just focus on the actual content of the argument. You say, "Oh, you haven't said."
There is no content to your argument. You're uttering so much crazy random shit. There's like nothing for me to even respond to.
If listen, you can say there's no content to my argument. In which case, I'll say you just
Yeah, he is a true
basically
Sigma.
conceded to me.
Fuck the
because-
mod.
Okay, so here's a question
He
then.
runs on his own time.
Let's ground this out. Let's ground this out a little bit, okay? Do you want people today to risk suffering real material harm for a third-party gamble in the future?
The people who don't vote on behalf of averting their
No,
own
the people that do
material
vote. Do you want them to divert their vote to a third party and risk?
On whose behalf are they voting?
I'm asking you. I don't know why you're trying to answer my question with a question. I'm asking you.
You're making it seem like I'm telling like a homeless guy, "Oh no, don't."
I
vote
never
for
said that.
Democrats."
You're talking about straw manning, okay? All I'm asking.
I can't hear my
The people you're talking about who are going to be harmed, don't vote.
Two.
Oh well, he's muted again.
All I'm at, let's try this again, okay? This
feel
might be
so
our next
bad, he
15 minutes.
muted.
I don't know if you'll ever answer this. So my question is, do you want people to suffer real material harm for a third-party gamble in the future? So telling somebody who would vote one party to divert to a third party and potentially suffer real material harm for a gamble of a third party in the future.
People are going to suffer regardless. That's what I was saying.
Okay, so you're not going to... So you...
I reject the framing of your question. People are going to suffer either way. I know
So
that.
do you think that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are making the same offers,
What
the
I
exact
miss?
same
Everything.
material offers to the American public?
There's 10 minutes
It
left.
doesn't matter.
I'm not... Why do you keep... Do you see how you're dodgy as fuck on all of my
I
questions?
reject the framing of your question. You're making it seem like right now is the only meaningful.
Because when you go to vote, right now, that moment of voting is a moment that exists in history. It will come and it will pass. It is an exact moment.
Not a moment later, but like almost a year later, we still don't have an infrastructure bill. So it's not in the moment.
The voting is in the moment, right?
We didn't
get
even pass the bill.
so we
that's
don't
gonna
have.
affect these people's
Okay, so here's
lives.
the question: if the bill passes, are you going to change? If the bill passes, are you going to completely change your position on all of this? Holy shit, we got an infrastructure bill.
No, I'm not, because they can't even pass the trimmed down, shitty, subpar so-called infrastructure bill that we have now. God knows the one.
This is a
they're gonna be able to
$400 microphone,
pass,
just so you
and
know.
by that time, it's not even. It doesn't even effectively carry out what it originally
So
intended
then,
to.
if the bill was like $1.5 trillion, you think that's worthless to the American public?
In the long term, there's nothing impressive
You
about.
don't have. Do you see like the talk around?
Yeah,
I'm good. I don't have anything else to say.
So Destiny. So you wanna use the same standards for both of us? If I ask you a yes or no question, you can only do yes or no, and you can't.
No, not a yes or no, but just at least engage with the question. Not like it doesn't even matter. The future is long. Like it doesn't matter. I refuse to reject it. You can try asking me a question. I'll answer. Go ahead.
The infrastructure bill. There's absolutely
Wait,
nothing.
Here's something. Here, what about this? You know those districts that Destiny talks about that like Republicans will never win in and Democrats are just really solid, right? With those districts, what if instead of you running Democrats, instead you run like a third party? There's those Democrats who are like safely entrenched. How about you run them outside of you mobilize those people and you work outside of the Democratic Party, or you switch out after you get elected, you switch to a third party, and so you'll be in office, and then you'll be able to have that block there. You have your voters already. You don't have to try and find you. So you switch there, and then you start having these people pop up the same way we have like the leftists in the squad pop up. So you won't be risking anything.
Who knows? I mean, I don't even see what your argument is here.
I like how
you both have been very good when it comes to moderating yourself, so I gotta go use the bathroom. And since you've both been so well behaved, I think you can deal with that. Destiny, it's your
Destiny.
Okay, you said you were gonna ask
Dealing
me
with the baby
question,
bladder.
and you just fucking rambled again.
You said you agreed with me that you don't have to answer yes or no questions.
I literally told you, yeah, you can ask me a question, I'll answer it, and you
Oh my
took
gosh,
the
look at
opportunity
this
to ramble.
No, I thought what you said is, oh, you
Bro,
don't.
Dylan's rich as fuck, bro. Look, he got DoorDash McDonald's. Look at that. DoorDash McDonald's.
You made it sound like you were about to ask me a question, but I guess you
Bro,
weren't. You
shut the
just
fuck
were
up,
rambling.
dude.
You're just rambling on the same shit.
Shut the
I
fuck
literally
up.
quoted you verbatim saying.
Sure.
You didn't
Okay, so then earlier
Who
then
the hell is this?
so earlier you believe that who is this guy that just joined?
Hello?
I'm a mod. I'm gonna just make sure.
Yeah.
Oh.
So that's
Okay.
maybe wipe a towel off your forehead. You seem really sweaty and nervous.
Wipe a towel off your forehead, bro.
The thing is, I
No,
can't
it's
argue
Dylan's
against
mod.
like the Nirvana third party where you've given me no positions, you've given me no reason to think it's going to succeed. You're telling people to suffer real material harms right now, or risk real material harms right now, to vote for a hypothetical third party in the future, and then furthermore, you're going to make the argument that the Democrats and the Republicans are materially offering the same thing to the American public right now. If Trump would have passed an infrastructure bill like this, why wouldn't he have pushed for that more rather than the tax reform that just benefited the wealthiest Americans? He got one major bill through, and that was it.
That's like saying, why didn't Obama push for an infrastructure bill? Because as the passage of time changes, the policy prerogatives change.
Obama's the worst example of you because he pushed for the ACA. That was his big legislative accomplishment.
Pushed for an infrastructure bill.
Because he could only do one thing, right? So what did they?
Trump did talk about the sorry state of American info. It was like,
yeah, but what did he do? What was his legislative priority? What did he pass?
Maybe he would have.
I want to go study the Obama administration, the early
you have
days.
one thing.
From 2009 to 12.
I don't know. Maybe he would have. Maybe he wouldn't.
I don't know. Who knows? Okay,
You don't know for certain whether Trump would have or
That's
would have not.
rich of you to use the argument you don't know for certain when you're advocating people to switch their vote from two confirmed parties to a hypothetical third party in the future for something that might be good generations down the line.
I'm actually not really just saying people should vote for the third party. I'm saying people should focus.
Dylan's
People who
stretching.
have the time to care about politics actively, like your listeners and even you yourself, right? You sit on your ass all day and talk about fucking politics.
I don't sit on my ass all day. I get involved
You
politically.
don't, okay, regardless, you don't represent the majority of people. Your life is mostly focused around talking.
I literally, the issues that I advocate for are literally democratic issues who currently own like both sides of the government right now. How can you say that my issues are not the ones that the most American people care about?
Because you're
I don't know
not
why
like
he's there.
someone
I don't
who's
keep up with this
focused
guy.
on, like, the way you make a living is about politics, okay? So if your life can be dedicated to politics, all I'm saying is focus your energies and your dedication on building a third party.
No, why the fuck would I focus on a third party when I don't know any third parties that are talking about the issues that I think most Americans care about? You should certainly have provided that third party.
There are enough like-minded people who agree that they can't get
You could say the
what
Working
they
People's
seek to
Party.
get done through the current two parties. And those
Like
people
what? You didn't give me an
together-
example of any of those issues.
Of what issues?
What are things that you fuck? I have to scroll like 10 minutes. Like I asked you literally, like, what is something?
There's a few.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
There's debt forgiveness.
Listen, if
That's
you want to be
probably
on
the biggest
screen,
one that
do
I think can
exclamation
unite
point site, and you
people
can join
across
the on-screen
aisle.
chat. It's nice in
the
here.
issue of big tech monopolies and big tech censorship, which is,
You got
I
Ice
guess
Pop.
a cultural issue.
Oh,
that
You
Ice
think
Pop.
people are united on issues like debt forgiveness and big tech
I think
monopolies and
debt forgiveness
censorship?
I think debt forgiveness can unite this country, definitely.
Okay.
yeah.
I think that there are
I think-
massive. When you say debt forgiveness, do you mean all debt, or do you mean like just student loan debt, or?
Well, there is a massive issue of just American people being in debt right now. And financial reform, things of that nature, housing reform, that there's we have a housing crisis in this country, right? And I don't see how the Democrats or the Republicans can address that crisis in meaningful ways.
Because the
Again,
crisis is very complicated to
Oh, yeah,
address.
it's very complicated because everything is just an objective reality, except when
Why
I
do you
decide-
keep saying objective reality? There's some
Because-
philosophy
because
debate, bro.
Everything can be explained by me deferring to other causes, except when I sit on and tell people they have to go vote for Biden.
If you want to push me on a single cause, I can explain to you the complexities of any particular cause. So, for instance, we can talk about housing being a complex issue. Housing is complicated primarily because the people that live in a certain district are already going to be ultra privileged being in houses. So, in order to uproot them, you necessarily have to act in an undemocratic fashion to do it, which is something that's very difficult to do in the United States. That's why when you take votes in areas about like, hey, like, should we expand like multifamily housing or should we open like a fuck ton of apartment buildings? Well, who are the people that are most likely to vote in that area? It's not going to be the transient millennials that come in and out of work jobs. It's going to be people that own houses, that live in that area, that have roots in that area. And when you're talking about voting for expanding housing in those areas, guess who that hurts the most? It hurts the most entrenched voters that are the most likely to show up to the polls, that are the most most likely to go to their city council meetings, and they're the most likely to stay there for long periods of time. That's what makes that issue like complicated, okay? Just because, well, hold on. Just because you've come to this conversation with, just because you've come to this conversation with zero understanding of any of the policies you're talking about, please don't project that on me. This conversation could have been entirely interesting in like 50 different ways. Just because you're utterly clueless on everything except for these weird fucking phrases that have to do with fucking dialectic materialism or whatever philosophy you want to talk about, doesn't mean that I came here clueless to argue about the specific policies that I talk about or advocate for. So I'm not hand waving shit like you are with your utopian third party. I'm on the ground talking about real issues that are very complicated and affect a lot of people.
We're not on 8 Mile. We're on Twitch. Okay.
I have to talk fast because you again talk like 3 times as much as me in this conversation. But there you go.
If you're interested in dialectical materialism, DM me and I'll set up. I can educate you and you can be my student. So I don't know why you keep bringing it up. You seem interested in the ideas of dialectical materialism. Yeah, one sec. And it should be like 5 minutes. And and you said, okay, I agree
We're
that
on 8 Mile, bro.
the housing
Quit rapping
crisis,
at me.
obviously it's complex, but can the way we address, like, is the inability for us to address it because of that complexity is what I reject.
Yes, it is. That is the issue. Oh, how would you address it with a third party then? Tell me how you would go about doing it then. I'll wait.
Yeah, a third party can have a general housing reform whose main linchpin, whose main policy prerogative is to make sure Americans can have affordable housing. And it can do that at the federal level to ensure that at these local levels and with all these differences between, for example, high housing prices and these issues of zoning can be addressed. Like, for example, I know you don't like me mentioning China, but when China engages in 5-year plans, for example, I'm not saying we're going to have our own, but it's just a broad policy prerogative. It does take into account the various local realities and complexities.
Damn,
that
you got
make
it.
impossible to just pass one bill that's going to be a catch-all to solve like the
Okay.
whole of the geographic and demographic issues surrounding housing reform. So I don't see like how your argument is relevant. The fact that we have a housing crisis in this country isn't only because the reasons you mentioned or because like, oh yeah, it's only about millennials who want to move to big cities. It's about people who don't have a clear future of being able to have their own homes and raise their own families.
I think this is just like, it's like the perfect third party like debate. Like you speak in these like useless empty platitudes. Like, well, the way that you do it is by passing a bill that takes into account all those complexities. Wow, just. If I just couldn't think of that, just do a big bill that addresses all the complexities. Jesus, why am I so fucking clueless? Obviously, and at the federal level, nonetheless.
Wait. I gave that. Wait. I gave you uninterrupted time to speak. Destiny's gonna have his uninterrupted time to speak, and then you're both gonna do outros because we were gonna wrap up uninterrupted as well.
Oh, here we go.
Destiny.
I just want to say that I also support really huge, complex bills that just solve all the complex issues, and I think those bills are awesome. I just want to make my position known on that. Okay.
Housing market's fucking us.
Okay.
Destiny's going crazy,
Pushing
man.
out into the matrix, and now we're going to do.
I'll do my outro.
Yep.
He's disappearing into the
mainframe. I never
mainframe.
said that you're going to be able to create a bill that's going to solve all problems. All I'm doing is saying one of the reasons we have housing crisis in this country, or at least one of the reasons that the current political establishment is inept in being able to solve that crisis, is because it's captured by special interests like the real estate muggles and oligarchs and financial institutions and things like BlackRock. And a third party isn't going to be handicapped by those special interests in being able to address the housing crisis. So that's just one example of where I'm coming from when I'm talking about this. A third party isn't a guarantee. All it means is you have a fucking chance. I have never preached any guarantee whatsoever.
Look at that combo.
All I've advocated for is a
more
goddamn
guys.
fighting chance for the American people. That's all.
Okay. Destiny, and then we'll have the vote. The judges will vote. Destiny.
When you talk to people about third parties, usually they're pie in the sky dreams. People that don't have a good understanding of how the government works, of how policies work, of why some of these issues are so complicated. I can empathize. I used to be the same way. I was a big Ron Paul supporter, abolish the Fed and all that shit when I was a freshman in college. It's really cool to think that there are these really complicated issues that can just be solved with one sweeping, federal legislative initiative. But unfortunately, as you grow older and you look at why things are the way they are, you realize these issues are really complicated. They involve, multiple people fighting on multiple sides of issues in order to get things done slowly over time. That's how the American system is built. And so long as we genuinely remain divided as Americans on a lot of these issues, the government will necessarily remain slow moving when it comes to solving these issues. We don't all agree on how to solve these issues the same way in the United States. That's why there's such a polarization of the parties. That's why there's so much gridlock in Congress. And hopefully in the future this changes, but I know for a fact that the thing that won't change it is fucking third parties.
Okay.
I actually have to go. So, so I don't really care about the belt or whatever. So,
Damn.
we good?
If you would like to leave, you can leave.
Okay, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
See you later. Bye bye.
Okay. So all
the
three
fuck
judges
just-
are Anna, so
just
she will be
happened?
deciding the result of
Good
this
one.
debate. No, the first judge
This is
is
abuse,
John
Steven.
Zerka. He is voted in favor of Infrared.
Oh.
The second judge is Mr. Geek. He has voted in favor of Destiny.
Oh.
And the last judge is the wonderful and always correct
Danabu?
Denabo, and
Okay.
he has voted in favor
Oh.
of Destiny,
Oh.
who retains the belt. Congratulations!
I was kind of hoping it was going to be
retain the
Hobbs.
Hippy Dippy Championship.
Wow, thanks a lot. This
Wow.
was, just an amazing. This was just amazing.
This was great.
This was
everything I
amazing.
thought it would be. It
Is
was
everything you thought it would be?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was everything I thought it would be too. So, is there anyone in particular you would like to thank? God, your mom, anyone in particular?
Where's Oz? He just left.
I just
He was
watched
like, I'm done.
Amazon from
I gotta go.
holding
See you
all these
later.
dipshit
What the
lefts
hell's
behind
happening?
that
No,
they talk about
please.
yeah.
Please, I beg of you.
Is there anybody you would like to challenge for the Hippy Dippy Championship?
Vosh on any topic.
Vosh,
Or Demon
really?
Mom on any topic. As long
See,
as
there
she
you
can
go.
agree not to cry in the 2 hours that we're talking.
Okay.
I told you guys, Vosh.
1 second.
He's gonna be like, I want to debate
Hello?
Vosh.
Hello.
What are you doing here?
He's having some. What the?
Well,
oh.
I think
Is
it's
he wearing a
obvious, isn't
wig?
it? Destiny, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing okay.
I think we both know that there's a destiny for Destiny.
Oh no.
Oh, it's you and me having a conversation
Okay.
about the intricacies of the problems of the world and doing it in a much more entertaining way, like you were talking about there with Haas. I mean, that conversation could have went so many different directions.
CTV
and then
is the third party.
like to just get stuck on those diatribes. I think you and I could have a much more interesting conversation about something.
Something.
And I'm on your heels. Just so you know.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind, okay?
Outstanding. Good to see you again.
We
Destiny,
could talk about
are you
something.
running from CTV, the self-declared People's Champion?
I'm not running. I'm
You're
ready
not running?
anytime, any place.
You know
okay?
he worked in a submarine.
It's true.
Have you done that, Destiny? No.
I've eaten a lot of subs from Subway.
That's true. That is true. Well,
Yeah,
Why am I
I've
not
never been in a
surprised
tin
that the one
can
thing
with
that you know how
somebody
to work
man
is your
before.
mouth?
I mean, I'm a professional debater, right?
masturbator.
Mm, indeed.
Curious. This is so
with
awkward.
that said, we'll set up the meet. CTV out.
See you later, CTV. Thanks for coming on, Destiny. I don't know if you saw the Titantrons and Billy the Fridge and the announcers and everything, but
He had to
Oh,
go
I saw
because he
it. It was,
went
like,
to go
halfway
top
through, sorry.
Dinkle.
Missed.
okay. Well, I put it on my Twitter if you wanted to see the Titantron we made for you. We put a lot of effort into this one and appreciate you delivering, man. I really do.
Look how he just walked away.
I appreciate it, my dude.
Have a good one, okay?
He was
Yeah,
turned around
thanks
for
a
like
lot.
half the
Careful.
thing.
Stay safe, okay?
Stay safe. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh my gosh.
Oh. That surely a hell of an event. Destiny retains. Infrared storms
So
out at
maybe
the end.
commentator time.
Jackson Hinkle shows up for some reason. I like when Jackson Hinkle came in. Like the whole time he was like,
Did he? I need an edit of that. I need an edit of him just like staring, and then like smiling and being like super silent. It was crazy.
So the Democratic Party.
okay. Okay. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Hippy Dippy Championship. I deeply appreciate
All right.
your support. This probably was the most high effort I've ever put into one of these shows. This is getting closer to what I actually envision with the championship. Sadly, the one downfall of this was, of course, Haz's mic. Next time we'll do mic checks before the show. That's the one thing
I'm
we didn't
surprised he
consider.
didn't do mic checks. Honestly.
A less controversial decision this time. See you guys later. I will see you guys Monday. I should also be playing the.
There you go. All right. It was fun. Fun memes, everyone. Okay. I'm sorry. I did really enjoy how Dinkle just showed up We must destroy the Democratic Party. They are evil. They are eating babies. They will never bring socialism. The people are crying. Like, bro, hell's happening right now? I'm just $400 microphone, okay? $400 microphone. You could buy this microphone right now on freaking on like the Facebook marketplace for like $30, okay? Like, the fact that his mic was so bad for the entire duration was just, it like blew my mind. The thing is, like, whose house was that? Do you guys know who that is? Who was that? Who's that person? Who's that girl? Why is he there? Why did she have like Dream and a Minecraft pickaxe? Like, what happened, man? It was Dream's house? You're such a baby. Breastfeed me then. Want to call quick? Sure. Sure, what's good? You can just call me. Oh, my bad. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm vibing. What's up?
I'm doing good. I just wanted to get your thoughts on the event.
I thought it was good. Pretty well put together, pretty fun. I have to say. The end with Haas and Dinkle together and the vampire really was not something that I was expecting, but the screeching was.
I did not think the mic was going to be that bad, though. I mean, that was like, holy shit.
Oh, dude, like, I'm sorry. Did you feel how awkward it was when like Dinkle came on and he was just like smiling, looking over? I was
waiting. The thing is, I was like, oh, okay, I get what's going on here. They're trying to do a Sam Cedar. I'm like, okay, what are they going to do now? And I just kind of sat there because it was like, well, you know, this means nothing but more excitement to me. So I'm just sat there and I was waiting for him to do something.
Yeah, I thought he had a bit, honestly.
But there was no bit. He just stood in front of it. Like when Sam Cedar called into like Steven Crowder, he was like, okay, I'm replacing H3, and that was the bit. And I thought that's what they were gonna do. Mm-hmm. But he just went there, stood in front of the camera, and then fucking left.
I'm not going to lie to you. I really thought that Haas like went behind the desk and had, you know, those like big cards that they have for like fucking nighttime TV show hosts for their like jokes and stuff. That's what I thought he was doing. He was fading in the lines, but he was like, his dyslexia kicked in and he couldn't fucking read it. So he just stood there paralyzed like a deer in headlights. It was so weird.
It really was something else. What did you think of all the intros and announcer stuff, production value at the start?
There was a little bit of hiccup with Billy's mic at the beginning.
Yes, I don't know. I think it was loading. It was loading, I think. It wasn't a problem with the video.
Okay, yeah. I was really hoping that it didn't continue, and it didn't, thankfully. But yeah, I thought it was nice. Other than that little hiccup, I thought it was really cool. People really enjoyed it. So you did a good job. I know it took a lot of work to put it together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And is there anything that happened there that else you would like to comment on that you thought was exciting, or anything you want to say about you were right about, or anything you were wrong about, anything like that?
I felt like I was going to come in best dressed, and I was 100% correct.
Well, Haas was better dressed, of course.
Oh yeah, you're right. The tank top really does take it over the top. The wife beater there. I had a feeling that he was going to try and dive into like a little bit of theory. Haas was kind of like treading water there for a little while. The diatribes that he was going on were kind of, I feel like it lost a lot of people, but I really felt like there were some good points that he could hit Destiny on that he just kind of like moonwalked over.
Yeah. I thought there was a few points where he could have done that, and I think he just went at like a much different route than I could have. The thing that I think really ended up screwing him, John Zerka, of course, voted for him. The other two didn't. I think was the intro with Jackson Hinkle was confusing, and I was like, okay, if you want to do this, you can. And then we were waiting for something to happen that would have been like the Dunkaroonies, and then I felt like Jackson didn't even know what the topic was. And then the other thing was, I feel like the judges found it very difficult to understand what the fuck he was saying. Which was the other
it's
big
hard
problem.
to judge someone you can't hear. I must imagine.
Like if I'm a singer and I'm just going like, oh man, doing great. Like nobody's gonna be like, okay, well this is I don't think anybody can judge you accurately.
I've never $400 microphone. I've never heard it sound that bad in my entire life. It's
But
incredible.
the thing is, I heard that on his stream, it was fine, which that's what confused me.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know if it was like they didn't port the correct one into the YouTube, but it seemed that was the correct. But I have no
an idea. Have an idea. Destiny sabotaged him. All right, Destiny's been practicing hacking in his spare time. You know when
is that why his camera
when
was
he
going
flipped
wacky?
over into the Matrix? That's when he was like
That was him.
re-upping the fuckery.
That was him in the internet.
Yeah,
he was
in Discord.
surfing.
Okay.
Yeah, he was surfing
in the
with
Discord
keyboard.
servers, fucking with his mic, trying to make it so that he wouldn't be able to win because he knew he would be bodied by superior Marxist-Leninists. So he was scared. You know, he can't let go of the debate bro persona. It wouldn't be good for him.
What did you think about the what was it? What did you think about the ending where CTV stormed in and challenged him?
It was a little awkward.
It kind of was. Yeah.
He is like, "Hello, Destiny."
He was very quiet. I was expecting more loud.
Yeah, I thought he was going to like be powerful. I thought
That's
he was
what I
going
was
to like flip
waiting
the
for.
desk. Yeah, but he was like, I really think we could talk about things and
saving
it
his
would be
energy.
fun. I was like, yeah, low energy CTV. He's known for his high energy. I wonder what happened.
I don't know. Who knows? Maybe he was calmed down by Haz's soothing mic quality.
Yeah, that could put a baby to sleep. Any baby, actually.
This meme is very real.
But yeah, you did a really good job. Thanks for having me on. It was fun, honestly.
Thanks. I'm very happy that you participated today. Having like people at the start of it, I think gave it more of a like, holy shit, people were getting hyped type feel, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, I really felt it like, oh, let's theorize what's actually happening. I want to read up a little bit about, especially Gothix, because I did not know that her and Joe Lewis debated before.
I didn't know that either, actually, when I made that.
Yeah, they had a 3-hour long debate about cancel culture.
Oh, the same topic?
Yes, actually.
I did not know that.
Yeah, that's why I was like, this is going to be round 2 for him, because in that debate, he wasn't very. That's why I mentioned that he wasn't very like confrontational, because there he wasn't very confrontational at all. But like I said, like I mean, the environment's a little bit different. I feel like Hunter pulled up the confrontation a lot more than he did. But I think they got places.
Yeah. Fuck, man. I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. And you have a good one, okay?
Yeah, you take care of yourself. Thanks for having me. Sleep well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
What a nice young lad that Dylan Burns TV is. If you didn't know, his last name really is TV. It's pretty crazy.